I never imagined the day I'd walk into my own home and find my wife's shocking affair. Rage consumed me as I watched her betrayal unfold with her colleague, Allan. I snapped. My cruel plan for revenge took over. I dragged them both outside, tied them up, and left them for the neighbors to see. The look of horror in their eyes was just the beginning. They thought they could break me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. This is my story, my revenge, and their downfall. The little girl was wiggling on her lap, making it very hard to style her hair in the French braids she loved. The girl had so much hair for someone so young. "Crystal Ann, stop right now, or we will be late for church. What is going on with you?" "Granny, Cousin Billy said you are a Yankee. Is that true?" "First of all, young lady, it's were, not was. Here comes Gramps. Why don't you ask him?" Gwen saw her standing in the doorway of her office with a strange look on her face. She was her husband's oldest friend. She moved from Birmingham to Boston when he did. Gwen had never really liked her. Her name was Crystal Ann Montgomery, but everyone called her Dixie. She was short, curvy, a redhead with green eyes. With her good looks and soft Southern voice, she had all the men in the office wrapped around her finger, even the married ones. Anything she suggested turned into a rule. She flirted a lot, but never crossed the line. She never dated anyone at the office, but was often seen with many handsome men over the years. Oddly, she never settled down. "Can I help you with something, Crystal Ann?" Gwen refused to call her by her nickname. "I've been hearing things, honey, bad things. I thought I would come by and see if it's true." Her green eyes were sharp and cold, showing no warmth at all. Gwen felt anger rise inside her. "What you hear is not my problem. I'm sure you have better things to do." Crystal did not get upset. "Sorry, honey," she said, her accent stronger when she was angry. "When you married Hardy, you became my business. Honestly, I've never liked you, and I don't care what happens to you. I did my best to talk him out of marrying you, but love is blind, and in his case, foolish, and he did it anyway. Now you've hurt him, and I'm warning you for his sake." She paused to gather her thoughts. "He's not who you think he is. You don't know much about him. He didn't tell you because he was ashamed of part of his past and worried that the rest would scare you away. I'm telling you this for your own sake. He believes in an eye for an eye. When he finds out what you've done, you better stay far away from him or it could end badly for you. Just so you know, I'm not saying this to help you, but to help him." By now, Gwen was really angry. First, she thought Crystal didn't know what she was talking about, and second, her life was none of Crystal's business. With a sharp tone, she replied, "Well, Miss Montgomery, thank you for your concern, even if it doesn't seem very sincere. But Hardy and I are okay no matter what you may hear. I'm sure you have things to do," she said with a wave. If she thought this would make me leave, she was very wrong. "Oh, don't worry about me, hun. I'm on my break. If you say you and your husband are fine, then why did Allan write blonde on blonde is back on his work Facebook? I'm leaving now, but I wanted to talk to you to help Hardy." "But you either don't see what's happening or just don't care." "I've said what I needed to say, but listen to this. I did this for Hardy, not for you. Remember, he's not like those fancy boys you know. There won't be any talking about feelings. He'll go straight into action. Just so you know, the one thing Hardy hates most is a cheater. When he finds out, I'll be there to help him. I have loved him since I was 14, and I would never cheat on him. I will be by his side in a flash. Have a nice day, hun." With that, she walked out, turning heads in the hallway. Gwen sat in shock before checking his Facebook. There it was, for everyone to see. Man, the trip to Paris was a huge success. The meetings went well, and more importantly, Blonde on Blonde is back. Things can't get much better. Blonde on Blonde was his special name for them during private moments. He thought he looked cool with his long hair. He said their long hair made them a stunning couple. Her dad and the senior staff thought he looked a bit girly, but he did his job well, so they accepted him. She grabbed her phone and called him. He knew it was her. "Hi, babe, what's up?" "Allan, are you crazy? What's with the blonde on blonde post on Facebook? Are you trying to get me divorced or both of us fired? If my dad sees this, you'll be gone in no time, and it won't be good for me either. He probably wouldn't fire his only child, but who knows?" By the end of the call, she was almost yelling. "Calm down. Your dad would never fire you. You're the second-best contract lawyer in the office, just behind me. Everything will be fine. Just relax." Not feeling reassured, she tried to explain. "Look, Paris was a big mistake. If I hadn't been drunk and let you talk me into that, it wouldn't have happened. We really don't want my husband to find out." Allan didn't seem worried. He wanted everyone to know. He wanted Gwen back. He almost had her until her dad brought in that guy from Alabama. "You sure didn't think it was a mistake when you were calling my name. Joe doesn't scare me. Remember, I'm a black belt. I won't search for him, but if he pushes me, he'll regret it." "Come on, Allan. Have the drugs messed up your brain? Don't underestimate him. He served 2 tours in Iraq. He knows how to fight. So, keep quiet. Got it?" Allan didn't plan to stay quiet, but he wanted to calm her down, so he said yes. When she hung up, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. He had almost won her over before, and this time, he was going to keep her for good. He understood her weak spots and planned to use them. She was pretty and smart, but most importantly, she was her father's only child and would inherit his estate when he passed away. Plus, her grandmother had left her a huge trust fund. It could be worth $300 to $400 million. Yes, life was going to be very good for him soon. With a smile, he picked up the phone. Gwen sat at her desk, angry. How did she get mixed up in this situation? She hoped Allan would keep his promise. Looking at the picture on her desk, she remembered how she had chased him. She went after him hard. His southern charm, good looks, and natural magnetism attracted every woman around him. He didn't seem to notice and treated all of them with kindness. But the way he looked into their eyes made them feel special and nervous. One woman once said his gaze was steady but held something wild and dangerous beneath. "Who is that?" she asked her assistant one day, watching him walk by. Lisa laughed. "Easy there. That's Hardy Wilkes, the new lawyer your dad brought in from Birmingham. He does all the free work now. He's good-looking, but he keeps to himself. I don't think he's gay, but he doesn't seem interested in women at all. I tried to catch his eye, but he missed all the hints." Gwen mentioned him during her usual Sunday lunch with her dad. "I heard you brought in a lawyer from the Alabama office. Is he any good?" She often wondered why her dad kept the Birmingham office running. Her great-grandfather had opened it as a favor to a steel baron he worked with. It had turned out well, and they got many clients from the steel industry. But now the steel business was almost gone, and the office mainly served a few old families. Still, it was doing well enough and seemed important to her dad. Her dad chuckled. "Of course, it's you who notices a handsome man joining the firm. His name is Hardy Wilkes. He grew up in a small town north of Birmingham. He went to college using the GI Bill. We support a scholarship at his school, and that's where I met him. He can seem like a friendly guy, but he's sharp. He might charm you and then surprise you with how clever he really is." I watched him take on a lawyer during a practice trial in his second year. I decided then and there to bring him on my team. After he got his law license, he started working for me. He isn't really into making money, so I let him lead the free legal work section in Birmingham. He was careful about which cases he took. He only chose those he truly believed were innocent, and he has won 93% of them. He looked at her, thinking. She often fell for the wrong guy. She had been engaged twice, but both times it ended badly because she was unfaithful. "Leave him alone, Gwen. You don't know how he thinks. He doesn't know your world, and I doubt he would fit in. Plus, I don't think you could keep him in check, which I know is very important to you." "Dad, do you really think I chase after every guy I find attractive?" He just leaned back and smiled. It was a tough situation. He was polite and kind, but he just wasn't interested. She was spoiled enough to feel very offended by this. Finally, she had a plan. There was a fancy dinner for Amnesty International, organized by her father to raise money. He supported the group both privately and publicly, giving money and resources. He was supposed to speak but got really sick with the flu and had to stay in the hospital for one night. Now he was home but wasn't well enough to go, so he asked Hardy for a personal favor to give his speech. He would represent the law firm, and she would represent the family. She arrived in a limousine to pick him up. Gwen spent a lot of time and money to look stunning. She wore a long, shiny gray dress made by a famous designer and added diamond jewelry. Her long, light blonde hair was styled beautifully. She really took his breath away. He wore a regular black tuxedo, but she thought he looked very handsome in it. His light blonde hair was neatly styled, his bright gray eyes and shining white teeth made him look great. The local press was everywhere because this was a big event, and many important people would be there. When they arrived as hosts and main donors, they had their pictures taken almost the entire time they were there. They ended up on the front page in the business section and in the social section of Sunday's paper. The front page showed them as Gwen Canaday, a contract law expert and daughter of the main partner and CEO of Canaday and Associates, and Hardy Wilkes, a well-known defense lawyer from the same firm. The business section included a story about the finances of free legal work for big firms, and of course, the society page wondered if they were a couple and if the Canaday wild child was finally settling down. The night was successful in terms of money raised and free legal hours given by various firms. Hardy gave a strong speech about why the cause mattered so much. They mixed with the crowd, and she stayed close to him, holding onto his arm like it was a lifeline. She said being next to him would keep her safe from trouble. She tried to behave herself, but was a little flirty, using soft touches and quiet comments. By the end of the night, she was much more sober than usual, while he had drunk more wine than he usually did. The ride back was easy. She sat near him but was careful not to make him feel cramped. She sensed he might pull away if she got too close. He drove her to her father's big house instead of her place. To her surprise, he said yes to having coffee before he left. They talked for 45 minutes and shared a soft kiss before he went home. As he left, she hugged herself behind the door, feeling like a young girl again. She had forgotten how nice that feeling was. After that, she went to check on her father and then headed to her old room. As she fell asleep, thoughts of his smile filled her mind. After that, she found every chance to have him with her for different events. "It's just work," she said. Before long, they were officially dating. Their relationship had its challenges, mainly because she was the one doing most of the chasing. He was very taken with her but wouldn't take the leap himself. The first step she took was to break up with Allan. He was smart, enjoyable to be around, and good in many ways. They sometimes used what he called fun drugs, which made things feel better in the moment but left her uneasy later. Plus, she didn't love him. At first, he didn't take the breakup well, but he calmed down and wished her luck, telling her he would be there if she needed someone. Her dad gave her a serious talk when he found out what she was planning. "Stay away from him, sweetheart. He is a good man, and you could hurt him easily. He comes from a different world. His values and dreams aren't like yours. You'll probably break his heart." "Oh, Daddy, don't worry. It's nothing serious. I won't hurt him. He won't even remember me in 2 years. I just think he's fun." At home, she thought about whether the name Gwen Canaday Wilkes would sound good to others as it did to her. Once they got used to each other, he spent part of each date explaining why they could never have a real relationship. "I'm almost 10 years older than you. I have no money, just a decent paycheck from your dad. I can't fit into your world, and I don't really want to. I lead a simple life, while you're full of twists and turns. I want a quiet life with a good woman and a few kids. I don't think you want kids." She felt offended and showed him a bit of her anger. "How do you know what I want? You've never bothered to ask. Maybe I want the same things. Maybe money, travel, and power aren't as good as the love of a good man. You'll never know unless you give me a chance. Of course, I like money and I'm used to having it, but when I think about a man, that's not what matters to me. I have more money now than most people could earn in a lifetime. Plus, I have even more coming from my dad. I'm looking for love, not just someone who can make money." She relaxed a bit and playfully teased him. "Sorry, dear, but sometimes you can be a bit clueless. Are you really a lawyer? I hope you're better at kissing than you are at arguing." So far on their 6th date, all she had received was a soft goodnight kiss. She felt both frustrated and eager, as it usually took her only 2 dates to get close with a man. But it seemed like she had finally gotten through to him. She had never seen his eyes look so intense. He looked wild. Holding her tightly, he kissed her deeply and with real passion. She tensed at first, but soon gave in to the moment. She felt a mix of excitement, possessiveness, and love all at once. When he finally pulled away, the only sound in the room was their heavy breathing. He quickly stood up, gave her a short goodnight, and left her townhouse. By the time she collected herself to reach the door, he was already gone. She leaned against the doorframe and smiled. Gotcha. Her father was not happy. Not at all. Don't do this, Gwen. It will only end in trouble. Please, Dad. Be happy for me. I really love him. Just think, in a few years, I'll give you the grandchildren you want. You know he asked me for your hand, right? Who does that anymore? He's the best man I've ever met, Gwen. I truly mean it. There's a lot of promise in that man. If there's the smallest doubt, let him go. I will keep that man in my life forever. I promise you, Dad. She won him over on their 9th date. It was at an art event. To her surprise, he knew quite a bit about art. He loved Impressionist paintings and old masters, but he wasn't a fan of surrealist and modern art. Pollock? Really? The guy just threw paint on canvases like it was nothing, he said. She loved The Scream for its raw emotion, but she also appreciated folk art and the Wyeth family. Their friendly debate attracted a crowd, and soon others joined in. One woman was a bit too friendly, and Gwen felt the need to defend her place. She tried to stay between Hardy and the woman, but it didn't always work. It didn't help that the woman was stunning, even if she was a bit older. Plus, her clothes and jewelry screamed wealth. Hardy noticed and joked about giving the woman too much attention. Gwen confronted her in the ladies' room. That Hardy is quite a handsome man. I would love to see his legal papers one day. The other women laughed. One even joked that they probably weren't short at all. Gwen had enough of it. Leave him alone! He's with me! She smiled sweetly, which made things worse. You don't need to impress me, sweetie. You have to impress him. She stayed close to him for the rest of the night. Why did you do that? They were in the car on their way home. Do what? You know what I mean. Flirt with that woman. Didn't she see he's with me? She's too old for you anyway. She must be around 40. That was mean. That woman, as you call her, is one of our clients. She has old family money from Birmingham. I helped her nephew a few years ago. She was just teasing you to see how you would react. And she's 39, only 4 years older than me. And who said I was yours? He teased with a grin. This surprised her. Well, I mean to say, honey, you should stick to law. I would beat you in court. She could tell he was laughing at her. She playfully hit his shoulder. I'm starting to see how sneaky you are. And just so you know, you're mine because I say so. I want you to be... She felt him looking at her in the dark. Be careful what you wish for, little girl. It might not be what you expect once you have it. She responded with the same serious tone. I always get what I want, and if it's a bit different, I can make it work. His mood changed suddenly, and he grinned again. Why, counselor, that sounds like a deal proposal. Are you open to negotiating? She smiled back. Yes, I am. I can bring a great offer to the table. They pulled up outside her townhouse. When he stepped out to walk her to her door, she dismissed the driver. Well, he said, watching the car's taillights disappear, there goes my ride home. Don't worry, my dear, I'll take you home. As she turned to unlock her door, she quietly added, eventually. She started brewing coffee, which he loved. He was a coffee lover, always buying fancy brews and trying new kinds. He had gotten hooked on it in Iraq after trying the local coffee. He used to say that many guys returned with bad habits, but he was the only one he knew who was addicted to caffeine. She always kept some interesting blends ready. Excusing herself, she slipped out of her dress and into a short robe. When she returned and sat down, his eyes immediately went to her legs. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. She could actually feel his warmth close to her. They stayed tangled together for a few minutes before he got up. Do you want to take another shower and start over? He asked. No, sweetheart. I want to lie here for a bit, she replied. She watched him walk into the bathroom. She didn't know there were so many muscles under those suits. It shouldn't be like this, she thought. He should be the one feeling weak, not me. Where does he get all that strength? To be honest, Hardy was doing his best to keep his legs steady as he stepped into the shower. Thinking of his grandfather while he washed, he felt sure he was right. The first time you are with a woman, son, go hard and fast and last as long as you can. That way they know you are a real man. After that, be slow and gentle, and they will know they have a good man. He thought this was probably the best advice he could ever receive. Afterwards, things were not all perfect, but she slowly got him to see her side. The only way he would think about marriage was if they lived together first. They knew they got along well in bed, but socially things were different. I grew up very poor, Gwen. I haven't had much, and I just want to give my family a good life. I don't have your drive or social skills for your world. Silly man. Everyone can learn, and please stop worrying about money. I've already told you I have enough for us. That's the problem, dear. It's your money, not ours. It will always be yours, and I won't touch it. If we marry, I want a prenup saying I will not gain anything if we break up, and we will only share what we have after we get married. This isn't up for debate, counselor. Her dad was moved by this, but it was what he expected from Hardy. They were both surprised when her dad said he would help Hardy with the prenup, no questions asked. He made Gwen get another lawyer from outside the firm to represent her. The meeting surprised everyone. Mr. Canaday had a contract that could not be changed, or the marriage would be off. If they separated because of serious problems, each would leave with what they brought into the marriage. If it ended because of his cheating, Hardy would lose everything. Then it became more interesting. Because of their big difference in wealth, if Gwen cheated before 5 years were up, Hardy would get $40 million, which was a quarter of her trust fund from her grandmother. For each year they stayed married, it would go down by $1 million, until at the end all he could get would be $1 million. Since her dad was in charge of her trust until she turned 35, and as her lawyer, he would manage the payment. Plus, it would be paid right away if there was proof of cheating, no matter if they stayed married or got divorced. Everyone was surprised. Her lawyer was nearly shouting with anger, and so was Hardy. Gwen felt numb. Hardy was really upset. I won't accept this. Why can't you respect my wishes? Hardy, will you marry her without my approval? He knew he had him there because of Hardy's strong beliefs. No, sir. I can't do that. Then this is what you need to do to get my support. You will be together forever, so this doesn't matter that much. Just sign the papers and set the date. Do it to make me happy. He turned to Gwen. Only she could see how he felt. He thinks I'm going to be unfaithful, she thought. I hope he lives long enough to see how wrong he is. She smiled at her dad. I think this is silly. I didn't want a prenup anyway. Where should I sign? Despite what her lawyer said, the paper was signed and filed. The wedding was the biggest event of the season. Even though it was mostly a Catholic ceremony, it took place in the largest church in town. Many people were there, mostly business and political friends. From his side, only his grandfather and an aunt attended. His parents had passed away, and he never talked about any brothers or sisters. The ceremony, the dress, the party afterward were all stunning and incredibly expensive. Hardy joked with Greg, her dad, about the cost, but Greg just laughed and said it would all be worth it if he didn't have to do it again. The only problem at the wedding was Gwen's mother. She had called to talk about the engagement. She was living in France with her 6th husband. I'm so happy for you, dear. Is he from a good family? He's from Alabama, Mom. Great. Old family money? No, Mom, She interrupted. Let me guess. Cotton, shrimp, timber? No, Mom, he doesn't have any money. Her excitement faded. Oh, no, he's not just after your money, is he? No, Mom, he wanted to sign a prenup to make sure he wouldn't take my money. I always knew you were smart. You must have him trained well. Not really, but I did get him to stop using the rugs. What? Just kidding, Mom. Are you and Henry coming? I'd love to, but Henry keeps a tight grip on me, and you know how much he dislikes your dad. Why would he dislike Dad? That was 5 husbands ago. I'm not sure. Maybe it's because of Dad's success, or maybe because I once mentioned that he was the best lover I ever had when I had too much to drink. I'd love to come, but I can't afford it right now. Gwen knew what her mom was asking. Don't worry, Mom. I'll pay for a first-class ticket and book you a room in that fancy hotel you love. You can use all the services and just charge it to the room. We can go shopping for dresses when you get here. Thank you, my darling. I'll see you soon. Gwen loved her mother, but she was not a good parent. When they separated, her mom got custody. She quickly pulled her daughter out of school and took her to Europe, telling Greg she would find top tutors for her. They traveled around Europe for 10 months, but she never opened a single textbook. Eventually, she wasted the money from her settlement. which was generous even with the prenup. Then she thought she could use Gwen to get more money. Her dad fought hard in court and won custody of Gwen. Gwen spent the rest of her teenage years being taught at home and started college when she was just 16. She became the youngest lawyer at her dad's law firm. Her mom went through husbands and money as if there was an endless supply. But then she met Henry. He cared for her, but he was smart. He gave her a monthly allowance, and when it ran out, she had to wait until the next month for more. Gwen used to give her money until her dad found out. He got very upset, saying he would fire her and cut off her money if it happened again. After that, Gwen had to manage on her own. Gwen needed permission to pay for her trip to see her mom. She loved her mom, but as she grew up, she could only handle her in small doses. They had some fun shopping trips together. Sometimes it felt like the roles were reversed, and Gwen had to say no to her mom like a parent. Her mom didn't approve of Hardy at all. "Stay away from him, honey. He's too much for you." "Mom, why would you say that? He won't let you control him, and you have enough of me in you to want to. He won't give in easily. Trust me, honey. Either he will break your heart or you will break his." Gwen just laughed off her mom's worries. Deep down, she was glad to see her mom go back to France. The honeymoon was a month-long cruise paid for by her dad. The only problem was when she wanted to visit a nude beach. He said no. She called him old-fashioned but didn't push it. He tried to explain. "I'm a bit old-fashioned. You knew that when we got married. What you did before is your business, but now you are mine, and I want to be the only one to see you. Please understand." She didn't agree, but said she would follow his wishes. They moved into her townhouse. It was paid off, and she loved it. He liked it too, but reminded her that when they had kids, he wanted a house with a nice yard. Things were wonderful for a year. They enjoyed each other many times in every room of the house and kept a strong relationship, only taking breaks when she had to travel for work. Her job as a contract lawyer specializing in international business took her away often. At first, she tried to cut back on her trips, but soon she was traveling at least twice a month for several days each time. He traveled with her when he could, but he also had his own work. When she was home, many business meetings happened at dinner, and he had to be in court early every day. Soon, their home life started to struggle. Little things began to seem very important. He was urging her to cut back on work and start thinking about having children. He was 36, and he felt the pressure of time. "But I love my job," she shouted as he tried to talk to her again. He wanted to be reasonable and share his thoughts. After all, he was a trial lawyer. "Sweetheart, I'm not saying you should quit your job. You're really good at it. I'm sure your dad and the partners are happy with you. I'm just asking you to slow down a bit and think about other paths. Your dad wants you to get trial experience because he's preparing you to take over one day. Why not give it a try? We could work together and spend much more time with each other." Spend time in crowded courtrooms with tough cases or attend meetings in London, Lisbon, or Marrakesh? She would never tell Hardy, but she loved her busy lifestyle. "I know, honey, and I will in a year or two. I just want to be the best at this job first. It matters to me." Hardy felt uneasy. This wasn't the promise she made when they got together. He didn't push the issue, which was a mistake. She thought it meant he agreed and that she could change when she wanted. Another 6 months went by and she grew more distant. He was a runner and had completed 2 marathons in Boston and 1 in New York. His goal was to finish, not to win. She disliked that he ran, saying it took away time from them. He kept quiet about it. He ran early in the morning and she didn't like to get up early. He would often run 5 miles, shower, and be ready for work before she even woke up. She was the one who often missed dinner at home due to work. Gwen began to resent his friends. He didn't hang out with powerful people. Instead, he spent time with local police at their gym, helping at-risk youth. He knew every officer within 10 blocks, plus the chief and commissioner, often chatting with officers when he was out running. As a defense lawyer, this was unusual, but he was always fair and honest, wanting only the truth. They respected him, but when he saw a patrolman struggling with a suspect and noticed another man sneaking up behind with a bat, his training kicked in. He quickly took down the guy. That made his name. The second suspect wanted to sue him, but being a lawyer himself, he knew it wouldn't end well for the man if he tried. But what bothered Gwen the most was his church friends. One Sunday morning, Gwen was in London. He went for a run, taking a new route. He was surprised to see how just 25 blocks could change from fancy townhouses to poorer areas. Deciding it was wise to turn back, he saw a church on the corner. As he passed by, he stopped to listen to the choir singing. An old man was sitting on the steps, smoking a cigarette. "Come on in, son," the man said. "We always have room for one more." The man shook his head. "Thank you, sir, but as you can see, I'm not dressed for church." He was sweating and his shorts were wet. "It doesn't matter to him," the man said, pointing upward. "Come another time. We'll always be here, and you are always welcome." The man stood up and brushed off his seat. "I have a sermon to give. Hope he forgives me for sneaking a smoke. Everyone thinks I'm just getting ready for the sermon. I've got to lead my flock to a better place. Have a blessed day." Hardy looked at the church sign outside. William Street AME Zion Church. There were many of those churches in Alabama. AME meant African Missionary Expedition, a group from the Methodists that wanted to help black people feel included. Hardy had gone to church while in the service and missed it a little. He asked Gwen once if she went to Mass, and she just laughed. The next Sunday, he stood outside the church in a suit. The same older man welcomed him warmly and guided him inside. There was a brief moment of silence as the crowd of black faces looked him over. Then they started coming up to him, shaking his hand and welcoming him. The service was touching, reminding him of the preachers back home. He visited his grandfather every couple of months. Gwen never went with him. He noticed the choir was singing without music, even though a big B3 Hammond organ was sitting off to the side. He asked the reverend about it after shaking hands. "It's broken, and we don't have the money to fix it. Even if we did, we have no one to play it." He changed the subject. "I can tell by your voice you're not from here. Where are you from?" "I doubt you've heard of it. Limestone County, Alabama, near the Tennessee border." The reverend smiled widely. "Well, I'm from Franklin County. I thought you sounded familiar." He paused and frowned. "My last church was in Colbert County. There were some Wilkes living there. Any relation?" "Yes, preacher. Unfortunately, I am. And I know their reputation. I was as wild as they were when I was younger." "Well, son, you seem to have changed for the better. God works in mysterious ways." Hardy laughed. "I don't know if it was God, but a sheriff, a wise judge, a tough instructor, a rabbi, and a good psychologist helped guide me." "Brother, that's a story I need to hear someday. Now, would you like to join my wife and me for lunch?" It was delicious Southern cooking. There were about 20 people there, and the good feelings and friendliness were everywhere. Gwen came with him once. 2 months later, he joined the church. A week later, he had the organ fixed and surprised everyone by playing with the choir. He had learned to play while he was recovering from his injuries during service. Learning an instrument was part of his therapy. Gwen thought it was a joke until she got home from a trip and saw a black teenager in her kitchen. She thought someone had broken in until Hardy walked out of the home office. He had been helping the boy with his studies and had stopped for a drink. They had to cancel the call to 911 and talk to the police who came, which was the usual procedure when 911 is called. Gwen calmed down but later scolded Hardy. "I appreciate your work, Hardy, but do you really have to bring them into our home?" He looked at her with tired eyes. "Don't you mean our home? Robbie is very smart and wants to do well in life. He just hasn't had many chances. I'm helping him prepare for his SAT exam. If he does well, he could earn a scholarship." She realized she had been too harsh and tried to fix things. "Yes, honey, it is our home, and I'm proud of what you're doing. I just wasn't ready for it. I'm tired. Can you take me to bed?" He did, but it felt stiff and rehearsed. Their love life had shrunk a lot. When they first got married, he would sneak up behind her and surprise her, turning her around. She would laugh and tell him to stop. But 6 months ago, he tried it again, and she shocked him by getting away and giving him a serious talk about his behavior. She didn't know then that it was the last time he would try that. Gwen was busy with the biggest merger in the history of her firm. 2 big companies, one in Boston and one in Paris. The details were hard, and her team, along with Allan's team and the Paris team, were working over 70 hours a week to meet a strict deadline. She had only been home for 2 days in the last 3 weeks. They had dinner with her father, and he could see that things were tense. When he tried to lighten the mood by asking about when they would have grandchildren, Things went downhill fast. Hardy answered without much feeling. You'll have to ask Gwen. We actually need to be together in the same place for that to happen. Gwen felt embarrassed. She knew she had not been paying enough attention to him, but the merger was important. Instead of calming things down, she snapped back. That's not fair, and you know it. I have to work like this to finish the merger on time. Many people depend on us. It will be done in a month, then we can go back to normal. Hardy surprised her. Oh, I get it, honey. What's good for many is more important than what's good for us. The firm comes first. I'm sure we'll get our lives back, at least until the next big project. We might have 2 or 3 days together. I should be grateful for that. Her face went pale. How could he downplay what she was doing? Before she could respond, her dad interrupted. Gwen, not a word! I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. It was a longer meeting than she wanted, but the look on his face made it worth it. They cuddled and held each other for the rest of the day. When she went to work on Friday, she was smiling. Things were getting better, but that changed when Lisa told her the boss wanted to see her right away. Oh no, she thought. What does Dad want now? This can't be good. She walked into his office and he moved to a chair next to her. Sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. This merger is going to make you shine. You will definitely get a full partnership from it. She felt happy with his praise. Maybe she was wrong about him. He leaned back, fingers steepled, looking at her closely. How's everything at home? Be honest. Oh, it's been a bit rough, but we got closer last night. I'm going to ask for 2 weeks off right after the merger. Just me and Hardy with no phones or deadlines. I'm happy for both of you. You know how I feel about Hardy. He paused and she sensed he was about to say something she wouldn't like. Sweetheart, the other partners and I have talked. You've done great in your department, but we think it's time for you to switch to litigation. A year or 2 in court will help you grow. This is a good opportunity. In 10 to 15 years, you could be sitting in this chair. You need this experience to make tough decisions. So, finish your project, take time off with Hardy, and when you come back, you can look forward to new challenges. It felt like a slap in the face. All her hard work, and as a reward, she was being moved to the hardest department. Court cases for rich clients could be messy and stressful, often dealing with arguments about money or foolish actions. Sometimes, clients did such dumb things that they ended up in criminal court, which made everything worse. The endless paperwork would drive anyone crazy. Her dad knew she was upset, but deep down, he wanted grandchildren. He knew they needed more time together to stay strong. She put on her best smile. Even if he was her dad, he was still her boss. After that, she slammed her office door and told her assistant not to bother her for an hour. Irrationally, she blamed it all on Hardy. He must have talked to my dad. They probably spent time deciding my future and even considered how many kids I should have. Later that night, when Hardy tried to kiss her, she turned away and offered her cheek instead. He was puzzled. Things seemed to be improving. What had he done wrong now? What's wrong, honey? Bad day at work? She had been upset all day and finally lost it. Like you don't know. You and Dad scheming to keep me at home and taking my job away? Why did you do that to me? She yelled at him for 10 minutes before he could say anything. Hardy was confused. He didn't know what she was talking about. Her dad had made a choice without telling him, so he had no clue what was going on. It took a while for her to explain. He felt sorry for her, but he was also starting to get annoyed. I'm sorry. I didn't know you didn't want to spend more time at home. I had no say in the choice, but I would be lying if I said I didn't like it. We made promises, Gwen. We set a timeline. We talked about this a lot. Now I'm starting to think it was all a lie, just another way for a spoiled girl to say I want. And I was foolish enough to believe you. But deep down, I knew this would happen. We're just too different. Even knowing that, I hoped it would work. I really wanted it to. But now, even though I'm not surprised, it still hurts. He stood over her, pain and anger shining in his eyes. She shrank back, scared of her husband for the first time. When he stormed out the door, she sat there in shock. To this day, she couldn't say how long she sat in confusion. Finally, snapping out of it, she grabbed her phone and called him. It rang loudly, echoing before she remembered it was coming from the bedroom. Did he come back while I was daydreaming? She thought as she rushed to the bedroom. But of course he wasn't there. His phone was on the nightstand, just like it always was when he was getting ready for bed. She called the friends she knew, but no one had seen or heard from him. In her worry, she called her dad. When he heard what happened, she could hear his frustration. Finally, he shouted, "You need to fix this fast. He's a proud man and you've hurt him a lot lately. Get your act together before you lose him. But if you want to end this, do it quickly. Don't let him suffer for no reason." "I knew this would happen. You act just like your mother. I should have said no when he asked to marry you." Gwen felt shocked by his words. Did he really think so little of her? She ended the call, asking him to tell Hardy to come home or at least call her. "And Dad, make sure to tell him I said please, that I'm sorry, and most of all, that I love him." She finally fell into a tired sleep around 2 in the morning. At noon, she called the local police to report him missing. Maybe they could help find him. She spoke with Officer Malone. Hardy is missing. How long has he been gone? She was surprised to hear him use Hardy's first name, but it sounded like he knew everyone in the department. "Since 7 last night. Can you help me?" "Officially, we can't do anything for 24 hours. Can you tell me, did you have a little fight last night?" "Well, we had a misunderstanding, but There you go, my dear. He's probably just taking some time to cool off. If he's not back by tomorrow morning, call me. You may not remember me, but we met once. I'm sure he won't stay away from a beauty like you for long. And I'll check around today, unofficially, of course. If I find him, I'll give him a little push to come home. Don't worry, he should be back soon." She thanked him many times, feeling comforted by his deep Boston accent. Officer Malone spread the word and soon found Hardy at a hotel uptown. Hardy looked surprised when he opened the door. "Tommy, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "No, my stubborn friend, everything is not okay. Your wife reported you missing. You should have heard her. She sounded so worried." "It's not really my business, but I care about you. If you hadn't helped me that day, my youngest might not be here. So please, for everyone's sake, go home. If her dad decides to get involved, it could make things hard for all of us." Hardy frowned. He had thought about going home, but his stubborn side was coming out, and it was too strong to ignore. So, the rich lady gets the best of Boston to do her work now. "Tell me, Tommy, did she pay you or offer to help your causes?" Tommy was taken aback by the words. Hardy stood right in front of him, towering over his shorter frame. His eyes were unlike any Tommy had ever seen. Training kicked in, and he took a small step back, reaching for his weapon. "Whoa, calm down, Hardy. She just tried to file a missing person report. I came here because I thought you were my friend and wanted to help. Sorry, I shouldn't have gotten involved. I'll leave you alone." He was stepping back out of the suite as he spoke, unable to look away from Hardy's intense eyes. Hardy seemed to shrink down, deflating like a balloon. "I'm sorry, Tommy. I didn't mean to be rude. I really appreciate what you're trying to do, but there's a lot more to this than you might think. Do me a favor. Please tell my wife that I will talk. I should be calm enough by tomorrow. I'll be home by 1. We can talk then. And Tommy, thanks again. It's nice to know I have friends. Don't mention it. I'm looking forward to seeing you Thursday for basketball tryouts at the gym. We think we'll let you coach the girls this year." It was the first time he saw Tommy smile that day. "Great! I can barely handle one girl, and now you want to throw a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds at me? Thanks a lot." Tommy laughed back. "Don't worry. By the second day, they'll all be in love with you. They would do anything for you if you asked. Good luck, my boy." As he walked away, he touched the rosary in his pocket and said a little prayer for him. It couldn't hurt. Gwen was busy. Once she got over the shock, she jumped into action and started making phone calls. She called Crystal Ann, but Crystal just laughed and hung up. It had only been 10 days since their last talk. Gwen hoped Crystal didn't tell anyone about her mistake with Allan. It had been a hard week working with Allan again. She remembered their earlier conversation. She really liked him, but it had been a mistake, one she didn't want to make again. Allan kept dropping hints, so she began to avoid him. She only spoke when work needed it. Thankfully, they only had one more week to finish the deal for their clients. Allan was nice to her. He didn't want to scare her again, but inside he was upset. Still, he knew patience was important for closing the deal, and he was great at it. Soon, he heard about her situation. He was dating her assistant. That night, before Officer Malone got back to her, he called her. He chose his words carefully, trying to be kind while also putting down Hardy. I'm sure he'll be back soon. He's just not as smooth as we are. He doesn't understand our world. He's too simple. Once he calms down and thinks about the money and your beauty, he'll come back to you. He had been doing this for months, throwing in little praises while hinting at how Hardy was not as refined as they were. He reminded her of Hardy's humble beginnings, his devotion to his clients who were struggling, and his serious nature. He planted small questions in her mind about whether he wanted her or just the life she lived. He even managed to convince her to go to a nude beach when they were in France, letting her adventurous side out. Then he expressed pity for her marrying someone who was so reserved. Gwen felt insecure. She never thought in a million years that he would leave her. But the call from Malone gave her some hope and comfort. She listened to his advice carefully. I don't know what happened, and I don't need to know, but he's really hurting. Whose fault it is doesn't matter. What matters is that you need to talk it out. Be honest and loving. Be straightforward when he asks you something. You're both lawyers, so forget about the fancy talk and just talk. And if things go well, I think Thomas Francis would be a nice name for a boy. Gwen actually smiled for the first time in 2 days, and she promised to bring it up with Hardy. Feeling grateful, she hung up. She laid out her most beautiful nightgown. She wanted to look nice, but not too revealing. She picked out his favorite perfume and a soft robe. She wanted to be elegantly dressed, but still ready for him. She prayed for the first time in a long while, hoping she wouldn't mess this up. Happy and relaxed, she enjoyed a light dinner. She called her dad to tell him that she thought everything would be fine by tomorrow night. After drinking enough scotch to feel sleepy, she went to bed. Allan sat alone, thinking a lot. His assistant had just left after showing him a text from Gwen. 1 o'clock. I need to be there by 11. If I play my cards right, he'll be gone by 1:15 for good, and I can comfort her. A little support, maybe some affection, and I'll be back in the game. At 10:30, he was at her door. She opened it right away, probably thinking it was someone else. She looked amazing, wearing a beautiful gown with her hair done perfectly. She was really trying to impress. Allan, what are you doing here? I thought I'd come by and see if Hardy was still out there. You know, offer some support, cheer you up a bit. Thanks, but he'll be here soon. I think we're going to be okay. That's great, he said, forcing some excitement. I brought a bottle of champagne to help you celebrate instead. I'm not sure, Allan. Hardy might get confused if he comes in and sees you. He doesn't know about Paris, does he? No, I told you it was a mistake. Please don't mention it again. My lips are sealed, darling. How about a quick drink and then I'll leave? It would be a shame to waste this bottle. Gwen loved champagne. It was one of her favorite things. This was a special bottle that was hard to find. He felt like he gave up a lot to get it. Okay, maybe just one. But then you have to go. You're a good friend, Allan, thanks. He hugged her as she closed the door. By 11, she was starting to feel the effects of the mix he had added to her drink. She leaned on him, struggling to speak. Come on, it's time to go to the bedroom. Hardy barely slept. He missed Gwen a lot. It made him feel good that she cared enough to look for him. Maybe things were finally turning around. On the way home, he stopped by the church, hoping the Reverend could help him. They talked for an hour. The Reverend took counseling classes now and then as part of his job. The church supported this, and many priests were trained to help couples stay together. Deep down, the Reverend had some worries about Hardy and Gwen. He wanted things to work, but he was unsure about her. He didn't really understand wealthy people. Hardy, one important question in counseling is, will I be better off with her or without her? I've prayed for both of you since yesterday. I can't make your choice for you. Does she make you happy? Do you make her happy? Can you both agree to work on your feelings for each other? Tears filled Hardy's eyes. I can't imagine my life without her. I don't want to. Then what are you waiting for? Go home to your wife? Love each other? I'll ask God to let you skip today's service. I'm sure he won't mind. The Reverend held out his hand. Hardy shook it firmly. Thank you, Reverend. I shouldn't be there for another hour, but I'm going right now. He didn't run out of the church, but he walked very quickly. He got home by 11:20. Not seeing her, he thought maybe she was out or still sleeping. He tiptoed to the bedroom. If she was asleep, he would let her rest and maybe climb into bed beside her. As he slowly opened the door, loud noises filled the air. No, no, this isn't right. No one should be in the bedroom but her. Not one to back down, he threw the door open wide, slamming it and leaving a hole in the wall. What he saw shattered all his hard work and dreams. All the effort he and his friends had put in to make him a better man vanished in an instant. He was suddenly the angry and wild boy he used to be. Allan was lost in the moment, ignoring the soft protests. He thought he would leave the woman embarrassed and alone for her husband. That would make her husband run back home, then she would be his. When the door burst open, he froze for a moment, then grinned. This was even better. When he was done, he would take care of Hardy, too. He turned to look back. Come on in, boy. Watch what a real... That was the last clear thing he said for 10 weeks. Through the haze, the woman thought the scream sounded like a wild animal. Allan might have been tough, but when someone is angry and focused on hurting you, it's hard to defend yourself. Hardy grabbed Allan's long hair and pulled him away from her and off the bed. Allan wore a neck brace for 2 months after that. Hardy still had a hold on his hair and kept punching Allan before he even fell to the floor. When it was over, Allan had a broken nose, a broken jaw in 2 places, 7 missing teeth, 4 broken ribs, and a broken arm. His eyes were black, and he had a split ear. Oddly enough, he never once kicked him in that sensitive area. The woman had started to recover and screamed, begging Hardy to stop. He didn't hear her, and when she pulled on his arm, he thought she was attacking him. In a fit of rage, he swung his arm back at her. This hit her so hard it split her lip, and she needed 6 stitches. Later, she had to get a new tooth because she had swallowed it during the fight. She fell unconscious before she even hit the headboard. Hardy had a brief moment of clarity when he saw her hit the headboard and then stopped. The only sounds in the room were his heavy breathing and the soft moans around him. Still wild-eyed and confused, he moved to check on her. Happy that she was alive, he noticed the 3-pack of superglue he had bought to fix a small vase she had broken. The vase was the only thing he had left from his mother. He kept it on his nightstand. One night, she came home a bit tipsy and knocked it onto the hard floor. It shattered into pieces. He didn't say anything, he just cleaned it up and saved the pieces. He took the glue and put it in his pocket. Then he grabbed her by the hair and pulled her down to the floor. Using his other hand, he grabbed his own hair and dragged them both through the house as if they were light feathers. Their townhouse was on the 1st floor with a small patio in front. It was just big enough for a table and 2 chairs. The patio was 2 feet above the sidewalk and surrounded by a short iron fence. Hardy often sat there in nice weather, talking to neighbors and reading the newspaper. Gwen hardly ever used it. With no spare hand and still full of anger, he kicked open the front door and pulled them onto the patio. Luckily, they were still unconscious, but when they woke up, they would have sore scalps to add to their aches and pains. He propped them against the back fence. Then he pulled their hair through the fence and tied it in a knot. He squeezed a whole tube of superglue onto it. He used another tube to glue her hand to his, and the last tube to hold his hand on her chest. Then he turned and walked down the street. People were outside, but no one stopped him, even though they looked at the couple on the patio. As his mind cleared, he pulled out his cell phone and called 911. He didn't say who he was. He just reported a domestic issue with injuries and gave his address. After walking 9 blocks, he reached the local police station. The first person he saw was Tommy. "Hey, Hardy, how did your talk go? Have you 2 made up yet?" Hardy didn't answer. Tommy, trained from almost 30 years in the police force, noticed the upset look on his face, the blood on his hands and clothes, and how he slumped. Softly, he asked, "What happened, buddy?" "It's bad, Tommy, really bad. I found her in bed with the guy from her work. I lost control and hurt them. I don't know how badly. I'm turning myself in." Tommy couldn't believe it. He had never heard Hardy get angry. He was usually the most calm person he knew. Just then, his radio crackled with reports and a call for an ambulance. Tommy quickly decided what to do. He remembered how Hardy had helped his youngest son before, keeping him safe. "Stop! Don't say another word! Get in the car!" He opened the back door and Hardy got in silently. He wasn't arresting him just yet. He just wanted to keep an eye on him and make sure he didn't run away. He opened his phone and called his captain. The captain called the chief, and the chief called the commissioner. This could turn out very badly, both for the police and for his father-in-law, and also for Hardy. Tommy listened to the orders and then hung up. He got into the car and started to drive across town. Hardy asked why they were going away, but Tommy sharply told him to be quiet. He thought it was because Hardy hadn't been told his rights. When they arrived at his father-in-law's big house, Tommy's heart raced. "What are we doing here?" Hardy asked. "Not a word, my boy. I'll be back soon," Tommy replied. He left Hardy in the car, rang the doorbell, and asked the housekeeper to call her boss because it was a police matter. Greg came to the door, looking confused. "Mr. Cannaday, we need to talk privately," Tommy said, staring at the housekeeper. "Come in. Let's go to my office," Greg replied. Once they were in the office, Tommy got straight to the point. "What can I do for you, officer?" "Malone?" Greg asked. "Sir, you don't know me. I work at the 21st Precinct. Your daughter and son-in-law live there." Greg's face turned serious. "Is something wrong with my family? Are you aware that they are having problems?" "Yes, my daughter called me. I think they'll work it out." Tommy sighed. "I'm not sure about that." He told Greg what had happened that day. He had been in touch with his captain and found out that Greg's daughter had a few minor injuries and was in a private room. The man had broken bones and a concussion, but he would be okay. Tommy didn't go into detail about how they had been found. Greg turned pale, but then he took a deep breath and looked serious. "Where's Hardy? I need to get there. I am his lawyer. First, I need to see my daughter to make sure she is okay. Have you told Hardy his rights? Has he been questioned?" "No to both. He hasn't been charged yet, so it wasn't necessary. As for Hardy, he's waiting in the car. The chief wants you to call him before we go on. I'm here to help until then." Greg asked the housekeeper to get some coffee for Tommy and started making phone calls. The chief agreed to let Hardy stay in his custody unofficially until any charges could be made. He also agreed to assign Officer Malone to him for a few days. Later, Greg took Malone aside in the kitchen, giving him some keys and papers. "Officer Malone, these are keys to my cottage on Cape Cod and directions to get there. These keys are for my Lincoln. Someone will get your patrol car soon. Call the commissioner. He will explain everything. Keep Hardy there until we call, even if you have to handcuff him to the bed. I need to talk to him. Please wait just out of earshot. It's lawyer-client privilege, you understand?" They walked to the front of the house. Just before they went outside, Greg put his hand on Malone's arm. "I can't thank you enough, but can you tell me why you are helping me? Why are you helping him like this?" "Mr. Cannaday, he's one of the good ones. He does his job well. He doesn't make things personal. Many defense lawyers win cases by attacking cops, but not Hardy. Plus, he's a kind man. He supports the Police Youth League. He gives money, but more importantly, he gives his time. Most lawyers just send a check, but Hardy is out there with us. If he has kids one day, he will be a great dad. He knows how to talk to kids so they listen and behave because he respects them and expects that back. But I helped him for two more reasons. Last year, my youngest son was a rookie cop working in tough areas. He made a rookie mistake. He thought he had the crowd under control and was trying to handcuff a suspect. The suspect's friend was about to hit him with a bat when Hardy showed up on one of his runs. He stopped the guy, and my son could have been badly hurt or even killed. Another reason is that you and I are related, though very distantly. My grandma was a Kennedy, not the famous Kennedys, but still family. My aunt looked into our family tree as a hobby. Did you know when our ancestors came from Ireland, the clerks at Ellis Island didn't always do a great job? Some of them could barely spell. Some of our family was listed as Kennedy, some as Cannaday, but they were all the same family. Just like you are a fifth-generation lawyer, I am a fifth-generation cop. Our families have been close for over 100 years. I was taught from a young age to take care of family. Greg felt overwhelmed. He thought his family had been fading for years. He reached out his hand and Malone shook it. "Thank you, cousin. As long as my firm is alive, your family will never pay another lawyer fee. We have to stick together. Now, I need to talk to my foolish son-in-law." He opened the car door. "Get out." Hardy got out of the car slowly, not looking him in the eye. Greg spoke right away. "Malone told me everything. What happened to you was terrible, and I can see why you're angry with that guy, even if I don't agree with what you did. But Gwen, was that really needed? You could have just walked away." Hardy explained everything, making sure Greg knew he only hit her once by accident. He felt sorry for her and was ashamed, especially knowing how much he hated abusers. But then he surprised Greg with what he said next. "She probably saved Allan's life. I wanted to beat him to death. If she hadn't distracted me, I would have done it. I'm sorry, but only because I didn't have a chance to finish what I started. Greg looked at Hardy and felt confused. He did not recognize him anymore. It was as if a switch had flipped. Hardy seemed different, almost evil. His usually bright eyes were cold and lifeless. I need to go to the hospital. You've been handed over to me, and as your lawyer and boss, I'm telling you to go with Officer Malone. Don't speak with anyone. Do you understand? Not a single person. That's your promise, Hardy. He nodded, and Greg watched the car drive away from the front of the house. Greg had them both moved to a private hospital. Gwen looked terrible. Her lip and the side of her face were very swollen, and her lip was covered in stitches. She also had a mild concussion. The doctors told him she would be fine in a couple of weeks. She wasn't fully awake, but when she was a little more aware, she saw her dad and reached out for him. He held her until she fell asleep again. His shirt got wet from her tears, as she kept whispering, "Sorry." He was surprised to see Allan. He tried to match his image of Hardy with the person he saw. Allan's face was so swollen you could hardly recognize him. His jaw was wired shut, and he had tubes and bandages all over. What shocked him the most was that both Gwen and Allan had almost no hair. He thought it might be because of their treatment. When he read the police report, he was so shocked that he had to lie down. It was one of the hardest meetings he ever had. A month had gone by. Gwen looked better with only small scars on her lip. Her hair had grown a bit, and she wore it in a simple bob. Her new look and quietness made her seem older. After she got out of the hospital, she came back to her dad's house. She was on medical leave from work and hardly left her room. Finally, Greg made her go to counseling. She had gone twice, but it was still too soon to tell if it was helping. Allan still looked bad, with bruises on his face that showed he was healing. His jaw was wired shut and would stay that way for a few more weeks. His buzz cut made him look very different. Trying to keep his voice steady, he said, "All right, you two, here's what's going to happen. Let's start with you, Allan. Here are your choices. Choice 1. You can resign, but you won't get a good reference. If you take this option, I'll pay for your surgery to fix your face and give you $200,000. You'll need to move far away, west of the Mississippi. I hear California has good doctors for this type of work. You will also sign a paper that says Hardy won't have to pay for anything else related to your bills. I've already covered those anyway. You must also agree not to press charges for the attack, leave, and never reach out to him, my daughter, or this firm again." Allan was already shaking his head no. He thought about suing Greg for a lot of money and wanted to get back at the man who hurt Gwen. Greg studied him for a moment. "All right. Choice 2. I will have you arrested for attacking my daughter and on drug charges. Your fingerprints were the only ones found on the champagne bottle. Do you have any idea how popular good-looking lawyers are in prison? You'll be living with Bubba in less than a week, and I can make sure of that. You'll lose your job, even if you win the assault case because of the drug issue. Gwen has already said she will testify against you. It looks like you will have a felony record, and you'll be stuck earning minimum wage. On top of that, the Boston police really want to get you right now. You shouldn't have been such a jerk when you were a defense lawyer. If you go even 1 mile over the speed limit, they'll give you a ticket. If you make a loud noise in public, they'll fine you for that. If you have 1 drink in a bar, they'll charge you with being drunk and disorderly. They know you like drugs, so they'll probably search your house, your car, and even you regularly. All I have to do is call the police chief and say go. Honestly, sunny California looks like your best choice. In short, I'll use all my money and connections to make your life as miserable as I can, and I'll do it happily. You shouldn't have messed with my family, jerk." He picked up the phone. "So agree with me right now, or the games will begin." Allan felt trapped, and he knew it. He was actually in tears when he nodded his head. Yes, Greg smiled for the first time. "Great. Now, before you leave, I think my daughter wants to say something to you. When she's done, I expect you to be on a plane within 24 hours heading west. Go past that, and I'll start making calls." Gwen stood up and faced him. He couldn't raise his head. She grabbed him by his hurt ear. He would have screamed if he could have opened his mouth. "Look at me, you miserable jerk. I lost the man I loved because of you. I've always wanted to tell you that without the drugs, you're terrible at being close with someone. I hope you have a long and unhappy life, and that all the bad things you did come back to hurt you." She let go of his ear and slapped him hard. The pain was so strong he almost passed out. He almost crawled out of the office. The paperwork, including the check, was waiting for him at the security desk. Once he was gone, they sat in silence for a while. Greg had his head in his hands. Gwen couldn't take the silence anymore. She had heard too much of it in the last few weeks. "Thank you, Daddy. Now can you please get Hardy to talk to me?" It tore his heart to say it, but she needed to know. "Gwen, he's gone. He went back to Alabama 3 weeks ago. He's not coming back. I barely got him to stay with the firm." Tears filled her eyes instantly. She tried to speak but couldn't because of the sobs. "I'm sorry, sweetie, it gets worse. He filed for divorce before he left. I tried to change his mind, but he wouldn't listen. He filed for a divorce because of cheating." Gwen fainted. Greg sent her home and called for a doctor. He gave her some medicine to calm her down and asked him to watch over her for a few days. 3 weeks went by. He was sitting with her in the dining room. She didn't say much except to ask him to find her a great divorce lawyer. She said she wanted to fight the divorce. He said no. She became loud and rude. He felt he was running out of patience. The spoiled princess was showing herself. "Gwen, I need you to listen. I've thought about this a lot. I share some blame for this situation, along with your mother. Your mother gave you everything and taught you to be tricky. I was a single dad and you were my little princess, so I spoiled you a bit too, but not too much. Because of how you grew up, you feel too entitled. It's time you learn about reality. Are you listening?" She nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about why the divorce lawyer she called hadn't set up a meeting yet. "Gwen, look at me. You don't understand what your actions have cost me. I will be paying for this for a long time, not to mention the money lost. But I kept Hardy out of jail and saved his job. It was close for a while. When Allan wouldn't press charges, a young assistant DA wanted to make a name for himself and wanted to press charges for the city. Do you know what it's like to ruin someone? I almost did, but better minds prevailed. The commissioner, the state attorney general, and the lieutenant governor helped convince him it was a bad idea. I've decided it's time for some tough love. You need to grow up and see how the real world is. I'm sorry, sweetie, but you don't work for the firm anymore. The trouble has cost us too much. Clients don't like to work with a firm that can't keep its own issues in order. So you're out. I have no choice." Gwen's mouth dropped open in shock. What had he just said? "It gets worse, Gwen. You've been putting most of your salary into stock options and keeping only a bit of it in your checking account. You've always had your trust fund, and I let you take money from it whenever you wanted something. Starting today, you can't take money from your trust fund. Your stock options are locked and you can't cash them out. Your grandmother had some smart ideas. There's a rule in the trust agreement about behavior. If you show poor judgment before you can access the trust fund, the trustee can keep it from you for years, even until you turn 50. Your grandmother was very wise and worried you might be like your mother. Don't even think about the townhouse. It belongs to the trust. So now, you are without a job, without a place to live, and almost out of money. Here's what will happen next. You can say no, but it will be hard to find another job anywhere on the East Coast. Yes, I have blackballed you. If you accept what I offer and behave, you can come back to the firm in a year. By then, someone else will have done something silly enough to take the spotlight off you. I'll even help you find a good therapist if you need one where you're going." He handed her some papers. "Congratulations! You are officially the new ADA, Assistant District Attorney, of Franklin County, Alabama. You start next week. Your salary is $38,000 a year. I'm a college friend of the district attorney, and he did me a favor for you. I helped you too. I found you a nice apartment. I paid the security deposits, but you will need to pay the rent from your salary. You can't take your Lexus. It belongs to the firm, remember? I leased you a nice Ford Focus. They say it's a fun little car. Again, I paid the deposits, but you have to handle the monthly payments. You're also responsible for your own phone and utility bills. The only rule for my old friend for your job is a drug test every month. It will be private, so no one else will know the results. I guess someone talked to him about your recent issue. If you fail the test once, you're out of a job and I won't be able to help you. Just do this. Stay clean, do your job well, show that you can take care of yourself, and I will welcome you back with open arms. If you fail, I hope there are jobs for junior associates in Iowa or North Dakota. Oh, and you're not flying. You can't afford it. You'll be taking the train. You can only bring 3 bags, so pack wisely. You can say no, but if you do, be out by tomorrow or I'll have to make you leave. I mean it. He stood up from the table, leaving her in shock. He turned back before walking out. Just one more thing. Hardy is running an office for me 2 counties away. You shouldn't see him for work, but if you do, be on your best behavior. Oh, there's something else I forgot. You'll be using your maiden name at work. Hardy made sure you have to give up his name in the divorce papers, so you should get used to it. He left her there, tears of sadness pouring down her face. She stepped off the train, feeling exhausted and unhappy after a 2-day ride. The heat and humidity hit her hard. Who would want to live here, she thought, as she pulled her bags behind her. No one offered to help. So much for the famous Southern kindness you hear about in stories. Maybe Hardy told everyone not to help me. Thinking of his name brought her a quick wave of pain. Yes, it was her fault what happened, but he should have fought for her. She hadn't seen him since that morning. She had asked her father and Crystal Ann for help. Crystal just laughed for a moment before showing sympathy. Girl, he's gone. He's not coming back. I told you, you were being foolish. I warned you what would happen if he caught you, but you did it anyway. Again. And now he knows about Paris. Allan emailed him before leaving. Mark this down as a lesson learned. You know what really makes me mad? I've known him for almost 20 years, and you are the first person I saw him love. You have no idea how jealous I was. I really did not like you. But he was happy, so I tried to let it go. Now that you've hurt him, he will be even more careful and less trusting than before. He might never love again. I'm going to do my best to help him. I will spoil him and give him what he needs. In short, I will try hard to make him love me. Gwen was shocked by how much pain she felt. It turned into sheer anger. Good luck with that. He is in Alabama, and you are here. That will make it hard to comfort him. He is still mine, and I will never let him go. I just need to see him and beg him to listen to me. I can make it right. I know I can. Crystal Ann looked at her with sympathy. Girl, it's been 3 months and he still hasn't said your name. The closest he came was calling you that awful girl. Let it go. Let him have some peace. This is my last week here. I'm going to work for him in the Alabama office. He'll forget you if I have to make that my life's goal. Goodbye, Gwen. If you find someone else, treat him better than you treated Hardy. Gwen wanted to shout at her, but then she heard her dad's voice. He took her arm and led her away after wishing Crystal Ann good luck with her new job and life. He offered to help her if things didn't work out. Once they were in his office, she lost it. Daddy, you need to fire that woman. She's going to try to take my husband. How can you wish her well? Her outburst didn't seem to bother him. He pointed to a chair and told her to sit down. Gwen, I wished her well because she's a good person and a better worker. What she does with your soon-to-be ex-husband is not my concern. I hate to say this, but I think she could make him very happy. Maybe she could give him the children he wanted so much with you. Face it, you pushed him away. Don't get upset if someone else takes him. She started crying again. It had been months, and she was still in pain. Maybe she really did love him. For the first time, her dad felt a little guilty for trying to change their marriage, but it was too late for that now. He cleared his mind and focused on the real issue. You are leaving for Birmingham at the end of the week. Are you ready? She nodded. It still surprised her that he was making her do this. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Please, Daddy, let me stay. Help me find a job at another firm. I won't make you ashamed. Gwen, I don't think you could make me more ashamed than you already have. I tried to keep it quiet, but it was too good a story not to share. Trouble, lies, betrayal, everything. All we needed was a rock band to make it perfect. In this town, your name is Mud and will be for a while. Do your year, gain some experience, and maybe grow up a little. When the time is right, you can come home. Gwen had stopped crying. Dad, I'll do it. I'll serve my time. I'll behave. But you know I'll be in the same place as him. Sooner or later, we'll meet. I just want the chance to ask him to come back home. I'll help you if you agree to do one thing for me. He looked at her, expecting a big ask. Just say it. But if I don't like it, I'll say no, and you'll be out of luck. To his surprise, she got down on her knees, something he had never seen her do. I'm begging, Dad. Please help me get a lawyer to fight for my marriage. I'll pay for it myself. I have about $9,000 in my account and I can handle the retainer. All I want is a chance to talk to him. No one wants to help me because they know who I am. Please, Dad, please." He had never seen her like this. Maybe there was still some goodness in her. He thought for a few minutes. She stayed on her knees, her face showing both hope and sadness. "Okay, I'll get Ivan. But if you make a scene, we'll all regret it. Try to act with some dignity. That's a promise, okay?" She was crying again. Through her tears, she promised everything he wanted to hear. Looking into her eyes, he believed she meant it. Ivan Asimov was one of the best divorce lawyers in the state. What made him different was he didn't go for the attack. He preferred to solve things through talking and understanding. He was the lawyer you called when you didn't really want a divorce. She had talked to him twice before leaving. He made her share everything. When she finished, he told her honestly that things didn't look good, but he would try his best. Saying a little prayer for his help, she went back to her things, dragging her bags. She was so focused on what she was doing that she didn't see the man walk up to her. "Miss Cannaday, I believe?" She looked up. He was tall, a bit bent, dressed in a wrinkled suit. With a balding head and a bit of a belly, he looked like a typical office worker. He held out his hand. "I'm Paul DuPont, the district attorney for Jefferson County, your new boss. I promised your dad I would meet you and help you settle in. Here, let me take those bags." Before she could say anything, he took her 2 biggest bags and started walking. "He's stronger than he looks," she thought as she followed him. Her bags were really heavy. When you pack your life into 3 bags, you learn to only take what you need. He put the bags in the trunk of his big Ford, then opened the car door for her. Once she was inside, he turned the air conditioner on full blast. "Sorry for the heat. You're visiting during the hottest summer in 60 years. "You'll get used to it," he said. She didn't think so. She stared out the window at the dry grass and brown leaves. She stayed quiet, but that was okay. He loved to talk. "I can't believe I have the daughter of Greg Cannaday working for me. Life is full of surprises. How is he? Still pulling pranks like he did in college? I remember the time he took a bra from our ethics teacher to make a catapult for history class. She was not happy. He said he needed the best materials for his project. She did not agree and made him kiss up to her for the rest of the class. It was awkward. She got him back by making him take her to a work event. He was so nervous she would want more than just a date. Pranks? Stealing bras? She didn't know that side of her dad at all. He caught her look. "Ah, well, we were young once. Everyone grows up." They drove in silence for a while. He parked at the Ford dealership, and she turned to him. "We're here to get your car. After that, I'll take you to your apartment to pick up your keys. Then I'll show you around the office and introduce you to some of your co-workers." He looked at her for a moment, and she could feel his authority. "Before we get out, I need to make something clear. Your dad told me how you got here. I'll be getting your drug test results. If you test positive for anything stronger than beer, you're out. No discussion. Just do your job well, stay out of trouble, and this year will pass quickly. Most of my team is married. If I find out you've done anything unprofessional, you'll be back on a train the same day. What you do outside of work is your choice, but do not mix work with personal life. Do you understand?" At first, she was angry. How dare he talk to her like that? But then she calmed down. This situation was her own doing, and she could see his point. "Mr. DuPont, I promise to do my best for you. As for playing, my only goal is to get my husband back so there won't be any playing with anyone." He looked her over and nodded. "I'll hold you to that. Believe it or not, I know your husband. I hate to say this, but I doubt you'll see him again. That guy has some serious issues, and I'm surprised you're okay." She must have looked shocked. "What are you saying? My husband is the kindest man I know. It's Hardy, not hard-ass." He looked at her sadly. "Listen, here's some free advice. Don't tell anyone who your husband is. Some people still have bad feelings about him. He has been called hard-ass since he was 17. He is the toughest man I've ever seen, even tougher than all the criminals I've sent to prison. He just doesn't stop. I went after him for years. He was involved in a lot of bad things. He went to juvenile detention twice. He got free both times when he came of age, thanks to good lawyers and bad cops. I finally had solid evidence against him, But the local sheriff and the judge, who was also his father-in-law, made him join the military instead of facing charges. I always wondered what secret he had on them. But he's back now, and I'm very patient. Sooner or later, he'll go back to his old ways, and then I'll catch him. So keep quiet about him. Many people hate him, and even more are scared of him. Some might try to use you to get to him. The car was silent for a few minutes. I'm having trouble matching the man I know with what you just said. He loves people, especially kids. I've never seen him be rude. Check the records when you can, but be careful. He led a group of small-time criminals called the Redneck Mafia. People were more scared of him than they were of us. At one point, if he set fire to the back of your house and challenged you to come out, most would think it was safer to stay inside. I hope you're right, that he has changed. But if you don't mind, I'll hold off on making a judgment until I have more information. Now let's pick up your car. After some paperwork, signing here and there, she finally got her car. It was a shiny red Ford Focus. Nice, but much smaller than her Lexus back home. Her new apartment was small but brand new, with 2 bedrooms. The neighborhood seemed nice. The office was small and messy. It looked like there was not much space. She met some people before being handed over to Karen Thomas, a senior assistant district attorney. Here it is, dear. This is what you get. You won't have much privacy or time for each case. You need to think quickly. We share staff, so you'll do a lot of the basic work yourself. Most of it is simple. They did it and were foolish enough to get caught. Most of the time, they just plead guilty, so it doesn't go to trial. Paul and I take on the really tough cases. The bad economy has made things harder for everyone, increasing crime and cutting our resources. Don't worry. We'll give you easier cases at first, so you can get used to things. After that, it will be up to you. Here's my card. If you need anything or just want to talk, call me after 6. I'd be happy to help. She paused for a moment, making sure her words were sinking in. Satisfied and alone with Karen in her small office, she continued, Only Paul and I know who you were married to. I know he warned you, and by now you must see that he holds a bit of a grudge. I didn't know much about his past, but I had faced him in court many times. If his fierce nature in court was the same outside of it, he could be very dangerous. People don't change, and he might have tried to cover up who he really is. What you've done might have revealed his true self. Be careful around him. It might end badly. Gwen looked at her serious expression and realized she didn't truly know the man she had married. Not at all. Hardy leaned back in his office chair, looking out the window. The thermometer at the bank showed 103 degrees. It was another hot day. Living in Boston had made him soft, and he was struggling to handle the heat. He knew time would make him tougher, as it always did. So he made sure to run very early in the morning. He glanced at the email on his computer and his frown grew. He had been out of the military for years. Why was he being called back? The email was full of military jargon, but the main point was clear. He had to see Major Stein, his old doctor, for a routine checkup. It also said it was mandatory, and if he refused, he would have a visit from the CID who would bring him in whether he liked it or not. He replied and confirmed that he would go to Fort Stewart, Georgia, the next week. Deep down, he knew talking to the major might help him. The man probably understood him better than anyone else. Since his breakup, he hadn't been doing well, often struggling to control his anger over small things. It wasn't fair to his clients, who were fighting for their lives. They needed him to be completely focused. That night, after his shower, he looked at the scars on his chest, arms, legs, and back. Most came from his time in Iraq, but a few, including one bullet wound, were from before he left Alabama. He was proud of only one scar, a small cut covered by a tattoo of a snake, a copperhead, just as harmful as a rattlesnake, but without a warning rattle. No one outside his close friends knew what it meant. He had told Gwen it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. When she suggested removing it, he said no, explaining it would always remind him to think before he acted. Major Stein sat in his office, going through his notes on Hardy Wilkes. Honestly, he didn't need to look at them. He remembered everything. Hardy had always interested him. He was smart and well-built, with a good sense of humor that helped him make friends easily. But as Stein got to know him better, he realized there was a dangerous side to Hardy. In his early records, he saw that Hardy had thrived in the military. He liked the discipline and order it provided. The first signs of trouble showed up in his 7th week of boot camp. His drill instructor told him the whole story. All Hardy would say was that he insulted his mother, and in the South, that was a big deal. The DI gave more details. "Man, I did not see it coming. Not at all. He just looked like a normal guy from the South." Every group of recruits has one who thinks he's smarter or tougher than us. That's the one you need to break to keep everyone else in line. At first, I ignored him, focusing on the ones who slack off and the loud ones. But then, I started paying attention to him. He never talked back or disobeyed, but he had this look in his eyes. The look that says, "I'm doing this because I want to, not because you think you can make me." I decided I needed to change that. I gave him all the tough jobs and extra tasks. He did everything I asked with that annoying half-smile like it was all a joke to him. It drove me crazy. I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a scene where I pushed him hard in front of everybody. I was getting in his face and asked if he was scared of me. The little smile was back. "No, Sir Top, I'm not. I respect you, but I don't fear you." I was losing my grip. I told him and the others to report for special duty 1 hour after dinner behind the barracks without their shirts. When he arrived, I was ready with 2 more DIs, and we were without our shirts, too. "All right," I said. "There's no rank here. No one is reporting this. If any man thinks he can beat me, step up." Nobody moved, so I started teasing a few others until I got to Wilkes. "Come on up, you stupid redneck. Let's see what someone who's not afraid can do." He just laughed. He laughed. Then he said that since there was no rank, he could call me a dumbass and walk away. Just like that, I lost control. He was walking away when I shouted at him, "Walk off, coward! I bet your mom would be proud of the wimp she raised." Finally, I got a reaction. He turned around, his eyes on fire. "My mom didn't raise me. She died when I was young. Didn't anyone warn you to respect the dead?" I had him. I found his weak spot. I started calling his mother names. I said I would talk about his dad, but since his mom was such a dishonest woman, he probably didn't even know who he was. I saw the cheating remark got to him. He was really getting angry, and I braced myself for his attack when he suddenly smiled at me. Then he walked right up to me, stopping just an inch from my face, looking me straight in the eye. I'll never forget what he said. "If you have anyone to say goodbye to, now's your chance. In about 30 seconds, I'm going to start hitting you, and I won't stop until you're done." Listen, Doc, I've been in fights before. Before I was a drill instructor, I taught advanced fighting skills, so I know how to handle myself. But if it weren't for the other DIs and the recruits, I'd be dead right now. I got in a few good shots, but he was much better than I thought. He didn't stop even when I did. It took 7 people to pull him off me. I lost 2 teeth, had 7 broken ribs, a cracked thigh bone, and 2 broken toes. Can you believe it, Doc? He even bit me. I needed 4 stitches to fix that. He broke the nose of one DI and got a few good hits on another before the recruits managed to hold him down. The other DI took us to the medical room. The recruits said they had to stay on him for 45 minutes before he finally calmed down. Of course, things got crazy. You can't hide that many injuries, and news spread. He could have been kicked out of the Corps, and I would have been done too. But he stepped up and told the commanding officer it was just a training exercise that got out of hand. He knew it was a lie, but it worked, so he went with it. He also sent Hardy to the toughest training school. After that, I don't know what happened to him. The major knew. Hardy was the best in his class in that school, went to Iraq, earned 2 Purple Hearts, and got 3 warnings. He spent a year back home training others before going back into action. He was in the middle of his 2nd tour when the incident happened. The major remembered the reports, including the talk with the lieutenant in charge. We were stuck in a small valley, and we didn't see it coming. The enemy was on the hill above us. They could see everything. We had just a small chance. I had 2 dead and 3 wounded. Every time we tried to move, they shot at us. The wounded needed help, but we couldn't reach anyone. They said later it was a weather issue. I was worried when a voice, one I didn't recognize, whispered close to me. "Wow, Lieutenant, what kind of trouble have you all gotten into?" I was scared. This guy just came right up to us, and we hadn't even noticed. He was tall and thin, with gray eyes and a goofy grin. "How did you get here?" "Same way you did, but I was quieter." They're trying to surround you, but the first two guys they sent out didn't make it back. Hold tight. This could take a while." And just like that, he was gone, leaving his bag and rifle behind. I watched him for a bit, and it was like he vanished. About an hour later, I thought he had left, when gunfire broke out in the cave, followed by screams and a noise that sounded like an animal growling. It quieted down after about 10 minutes, except for a scream that sounded like a girl. Our interpreter told us there was a boy shouting that he was giving up and begging for his life. He was asking Allah to help him escape from a terrible creature. We decided to take a chance and quickly entered the cave. There were 7 men inside, and 5 of them were dead. The only survivor was a boy, who we later found out was 15. He was curled up in a small space at the back of the cave, pleading for his life. The other man who was still alive was named Hardy. He had been shot 3 times, once in his right arm, which was broken. He also hurt his left leg when he fell into the cave. He said it was deeper than he expected. He had been stabbed twice, yet he still had an AK-47 rifle hanging from his back by its blade. His side gun had stopped working after he fired it 4 times. He had managed to shoot 3 men before it failed, and then he used his knife. One man got stabbed in the heart, but the other one fought back hard. This man was cut and stabbed at least 10 times. The boy was scared. It was his first time in a fight. What really scared the boy was that even though Hardy was badly hurt, he still had his knife in his left hand and was dragging his body towards the boy. We were sure he planned to kill the boy as soon as he got close enough. The medic had to give him 2 shots of medicine to put him to sleep. Hardy was swinging the knife at us, and it took him 15 minutes to realize we weren't enemies. While we waited for the helicopter, we followed Hardy's trail and found 5 more Taliban men lying dead with their throats cut. Later, we learned that one of the men Hardy killed was the son of a Taliban leader, and the boy was his grandson. Things got so tense for those with blonde hair that they even started using hair dye for a while. We even got some blonde wigs and left pieces of them around during our patrols just to mess with their minds. Of course, Hardy was back in the States by the time that all happened. You hear many strange stories while you're over there, but I never thought they were true until then. He was one of those soldiers sent out alone with orders to cause as much trouble as possible. I wonder how many Taliban men are now sitting with their promised rewards if you traced back where he went. He was the toughest man I ever saw, the major recalled when he first treated Hardy. At the time, PTSD was just becoming known, and the military was rightly worried about it. They needed a complete profile before sending him back to civilian life. He read the original report about Hardy. It said he should have been sent back after an earlier incident. When he finally met Hardy, he was shocked. Hardy seemed like a relaxed, happy country boy with a big smile. It took a long time to understand his thoughts and beliefs. It wasn't until they talked about his childhood that the major got his first real insight. Hardy's smile vanished as he remembered difficult times. He recalled his words clearly. "I was 12, my sister was 11. My dad was a small-time criminal. He always found trouble and spent short times in jail. Then he got caught for stealing cars and selling them for parts. His lawyer told him he would go to prison, but he would try to make the time shorter. The lawyer said he could help get Dad out on bail, but it would take a few days. Finally, my grandpa paid the bail. Mom and the lawyer planned to take him home the next day, but Dad hitchhiked back to surprise us. When we got home from school, he was waiting in his truck. He got out and greeted us. He took us to the truck. I noticed he had blood on his white t-shirt. "Kids, we're going to sit here for a bit. I need to tell you something. I love you both very much. I'm going away for a long time. Hardy, I want you to be strong now and look out for your sister. Promise me you will keep her safe." I promised. He then turned to my sister. "Sissy, you will be as pretty as your mom. Find a good man and love him deeply. And promise me, swear you will never be unfaithful. You may not understand now, but you will later." He hugged us, crying. It was the only time I ever saw him cry. We heard sirens, and soon 3 police cars drove into the yard. The first officer was Will Rob Williams. He was just a deputy back then, but later he became sheriff. He was family friends with us, and I was surprised to see him with his gun drawn. "Jimmy," he said, "step away from the kids." Dad stood up, arms out. He was calm. "Will Rob, I don't have a gun. It's on the floor in the bedroom. I called you. I give up. Just don't scare my kids more than you have to." He put his hands out to be handcuffed. Will Robb cuffed him and put him in the police car. He didn't know that I followed him inside. He found 2 people in his bedroom, and in his anger, he grabbed an old gun and shot them. It was shocking, and it took a long time for me to heal from it. 2 years later, my dad died in a prison fight while trying to help a guard. To be honest, I never got over losing him. I got into trouble and hung out with the wrong crowd, which landed me in juvenile detention a couple of times. Then I got caught for stealing cars, too. Will Robb and the judge offered me a chance, join the military and keep my record clean. I actually liked the military, but I knew it wasn't going to be my forever job. If I'm here now, it means you don't want that for me either. The major asked why he went after me when I was just trying to give up. When I jumped into the cave, you were running the machine gun, grinning like you were having the time of your life. One thing I learned is to never let a dangerous person get behind you. If he hadn't panicked, I would be the one who was dead, and he would be the hero of his village. I wasn't going to let him live to harm anyone else. He said it calmly, as if it was just common sense. He was right. He could never have a normal career. He was too unpredictable. There were many people who would want him because he had a troubled mind and a talent for violence, but the major wanted to help him. He was surprised to see that Hardy had taken every chance to learn and just needed 1 more semester to finish a business degree. Since he would be in rehab for at least another year, the major encouraged him to keep studying. He never thought of him as a lawyer, but he did have the right skills. Hardy was smart, had a sharp mind, could trick others, noticed things easily, and was quick on his feet. By the end of his physical and mental rehab, the major believed Hardy could control his anger and instincts enough to be a good citizen. Still, he put him on a watch list. In the end, he figured out that Hardy had PTSD, but only he knew it wasn't from military service. It stemmed from something that happened when he was 12 years old. Now it seemed that Hardy had messed up. If he didn't get a good report after his interview, the major didn't know what would happen next. Gwen hated her life. Every day she dealt with the worst people, and it really took the fun out of living. It took a while to adjust. Her first case involved a car theft. It was pretty clear-cut. The guy was found in the stolen car and had a screwdriver that had his fingerprints on it. He denied it, claiming he borrowed the car from a friend, but he couldn't provide a name or address for this friend. The young black man even denied being in the car after he was caught. Gwen couldn't believe it. The public defender knew she was new and tried to get the man a light sentence. While she was still learning about court cases, she was good at negotiating, which turned out to be a big part of her job. Karen, a more experienced lawyer, was watching her, and she wanted to make a good impression. She leaned back, studying them, letting the tension build. "Enough of this nonsense," she shouted. "Your client is on video being pulled from the car, yelling and cursing. He had drugs in his pocket and a blood alcohol level of 0.10, which is too high. His record is so long it took 3 pages to print. I'm new here and I would love to go to trial just to practice my skills. I have to offer you a deal, but I really hope you don't take it. Your client makes me want to run to the bathroom. Here's the deal. Plead guilty to car theft and I will overlook the drugs and drinking. I will even try to get him into rehab. You have until I get back to decide. If you don't take the deal, I will charge him with everything, and the punishment will be much worse. With his past, it will be a long time before he steals another car." She stood up, leaving Karen, the public defender, and the man who did wrong sitting there, surprised. She really needed to go to the bathroom, and when she returned, Karen was there smiling. "They took the deal before you even had time to wash your hands. The public defender will probably go back and tell everyone about the tough new assistant district attorney. I think you might do well here, but I have to warn you, not all of them will be this easy." They weren't. The amount of work was really heavy. She started taking work home since she didn't have much else to do. This made her stand out. Paul called her into his office. "Girl, I'm impressed. You have what it takes to be a great trial lawyer. But you need to relax. All work and no fun is not good. Go out, have some drinks, and chat with people. I've heard stories about the Ice Queen from the north. You would be surprised how many guys want to get to know you." Before she could react, he changed the topic. "How's the divorce going? I see you still wear your ring, that's why guys haven't been bothering you too much. But if people find out you're getting divorced, they'll start coming after you." She sighed. Ivan was really good at making things difficult, wanting mandatory counseling. So far, He had not succeeded, and strangely, Hardy's lawyer didn't seem in a hurry either. It had been 6 months since her marriage ended, and she still hadn't seen or talked to him. I don't know how it is going. Everything feels stuck. I can't talk to him, and he won't talk to me. I'm starting to lose hope. She couldn't believe she could still cry over him. It was hardest at night when she turned over, hoping he would hug her and kiss her like he used to, only to wake up and find she was alone. On Friday nights, she would go out for drinks after work with Karen and a few friends. Sometimes she would catch a movie with a female friend, but that was about all. She joined a gym to work out and relieve stress. The feeling of loneliness and lack of touch was hurting her. She would have given anything for a chance to see Hardy again. She got her chance in the most surprising way. A small man looking to be in his 60s or 70s and a tall woman in her mid-40s came to her apartment. She didn't know them, but when they explained who they were, she invited them in quickly. You might not remember us, but we were at your wedding. I'm Joshua Hardy. Hardy Wilkes is my grandson. This is my niece, Hildy Baker. If it's not too much trouble, could we sit with you for a bit? She guided them to the living room and asked if they wanted a drink. Hildy asked for iced tea and frowned when she learned all she had was unsweetened. Gwen still wasn't used to the super-sweet tea that Southerners loved. Joshua wanted a beer. They both chose a St. Pauli girl, her favorite drink, and one of the few treats she allowed herself. After taking a big gulp, the old man began to speak. We're here about Hardy. He is not doing well at all. He's been seeing the therapist he had during his time in the service, but he won't say much. He's tense, and the whole family is trying to be careful around him. You know what he can do when he gets angry. We really need your help. Tears filled her eyes again. She couldn't help it. I want to help you, but he doesn't want to see me at all. He's made that very clear, but I'll do whatever you need. Joshua cleared his throat. He still has strong feelings for you. I know he has a picture of you on his dresser. He says it's to remind him of his mistakes, but I doubt he really believes that. He feels very bad about what happened when he found you with that man. He's not upset about hitting that guy or getting mad at you. It's what he did after that. Gwen felt a strong urge to touch her left side. Getting rid of superglue is hard, and it pulled off some skin. Allan had it worse. He lost a lot of skin in a painful spot. It hurt him so much he needed medicine to help with the pain and to keep him calm while he healed. What she didn't know was that it took Allan months to be able to feel normal again. It was painful for me, too. If he wanted to teach me a lesson about cheating, he sure did. What he doesn't know is that I was drugged, and it was effectively not my choice. I even remember trying to get away. Hildy listened closely. If that's true, it could help. Do you have proof? I can get the hospital report they made. Would that help? She frowned, thinking. It might. But Hardy told us you were with that man before in Paris. Is that true? Gwen turned red. It wasn't easy to explain. I'm ashamed to say it is true. There were drugs, but I took them on my own. It was a dumb and selfish thing to do. I don't even know why I did it. Joshua spoke slowly, his voice sad. That might make things worse. If it had been just once and you were drugged, he might have been able to move on. But twice? I don't think he will. He then told her about Hardy's parents and how their actions made him hate cheating spouses. Gwen felt sick as she listened. It gets worse. Did you know he has a sister? He hasn't seen or talked to her in 10 years. Why? Because he cut her off from the family. She got married to a good guy, but 2 years later she cheated on him, and Hardy caught her. He hurt both her and her lover badly. Then he got angry with her husband for letting it happen, even though the husband never knew. About 3 months later, they made up and moved away because they were scared of him. Now she has 3 kids, and I have great-grandchildren I rarely see unless I go to her. She's too scared to come back. Her partner just vanished. He left his car, clothes, and everything. To this day, there's a pond out deep in the woods that no one will fish in. Hearing the news shook her. Did she really marry such a terrible man? Why did she still love him so much and want him back? Please, Mr. Hardy, how can I help? I'll do anything. Well, if you are ready, the first step is to meet face to face. The family reunion is always on the second Saturday in September. That's in 3 weeks. He never misses it. I always wondered why you didn't come, but it doesn't matter. Just be there. And we'll make sure you meet in a safe way, just in case things get bad. Are you in? She nodded, unable to speak. Good. Come over this Sunday for dinner. That's lunch for you Northerners. I'd like to talk more. Give Hildy your number. She will tell you how to get to my place. Thank you for your time." They stood up to leave. She surprised everyone by kissing his cheek and hugging Hildy. She stepped back, embarrassed, but he gently patted her cheek and Hildy smiled. "See you Sunday. Get there before noon." She watched them drive away in the old pickup, feeling hope for the first time in months. Hardy felt restless and on edge. His meeting with Major Stein was tough, and he decided to set up regular appointments every 2 weeks. He even gave himself a prescription to help him relax. He hated taking it because it felt like admitting he was losing his mind, but it worked. It actually helped him. Crystal coming back also made things better, but he knew she had her own plans, so he kept their time together short. He didn't want to lead her on because he wasn't ready for a relationship. She understood, but she still made it clear she was interested. The cases he worked on helped him stay busy. Greg let him handle the cases he found important. There were many, and it was hard to find services like his, especially free ones. Most cases were just people being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some were guilty, but there were reasons behind it. He tried to clear the innocent and ensure the guilty were treated fairly. His reputation grew, and he got job offers from top firms all over the country. Greg called him nearly every week. He wanted to talk about his daughter, but Hardy always cut the conversation short and hung up. What Hardy didn't know was that Greg was also keeping an eye on his daughter and was happy with what he saw. Paul had good things to say about her, but he was worried about her mental health. All she does is work and go home. Sometimes she even brings work home. Her drug tests have all been clean. She's like a hermit. She doesn't even go grocery shopping. How bad is that for her? He still talked to her once a week, and their chats were always the same. She would talk about a case in a general way and ask for his advice. Then she would ask if Ivan had any updates. The answer was always the same. He was still working on it. What he didn't tell her was that he had a brief chat with Hardy's lawyer, telling him to take his time with the court papers. The lawyer was surprised that someone like Greg would suggest he not act in his client's best interest. But they were friends, and Greg, along with Ivan, convinced him that maybe getting a divorce wasn't the best choice for anyone. So everything moved very slowly. The one good thing for Hardy was reconnecting with his family, mostly cousins from his mother's side. His dad had one brother who died in Vietnam, and one sister who died in a car crash when she was young. He and his sister were the only family who could inherit his grandfather's farm. He especially loved Aunt Hildy. She was as close to a mother as he would ever have. He had Sunday dinner with his grandfather and any cousins who could come almost every week. Even though they were related only through his daughter-in-law, they still treated Joshua like a grandparent. Maybe it was because he was a good man, or because most of their own grandparents were gone, and family really mattered to them. He often thought his family worked like a matriarchal group. They respected his grandfather, but Aunt Hildy was the one who settled arguments, listened to the younger ones, and made final decisions. No one dared to question her. Fortunately, she had natural wisdom and a lot of common sense. This was pretty normal in the South. When you saw someone, the first thing they said was, "How's your mama and them?" Them meant the rest of the family. It really showed what was important to them. Usually everyone brought a side dish. There was always plenty of fried chicken, pork chops, hamburgers, or steaks to go around. If there wasn't enough, they made more. It was the best part of his week. He was very disappointed that he had to travel and miss it this week. Gwen didn't know what to expect, so she was thankful when Hildy gave her advice. Not being much of a cook, she arrived at 9 with 2 cases of St. Pauli beer, ready to help Hildy. Joshua was happy to see the beer and put it on ice while Hildy warned him not to drink it before dinner. By 10, people began to arrive. Gwen had learned how to make tea and had several gallons ready to cool. The introductions went by fast and she felt lost. "Don't worry, dear, you'll get it soon. For now, just smile and be nice. They'll like you in no time." What troubled her the most was how the younger people called her Aunt Gwen. Hildy explained, "Be happy about it. When they call an older woman aunt, it shows respect and that they accept you. They know who you are, but most won't mention it. Now, help me with the burgers and hot dogs." This was the best afternoon she had since moving south. After the meal, she found herself sitting with women of all ages, from teens to some in their late 50s, resting under the shade of a big oak tree. The men went off to play horseshoes and drink beer. Soon the questions started. Was she really a lawyer? What was Boston like? Did she like living here? The questions kept coming. Then one girl asked the big question, what's Uncle Hardy like? To the younger ones, he was a legend. A war hero, married to a lovely Boston woman and a protector of the weak. She chose her words carefully. He's the best man I know, kind and caring, a true Southern gentleman. One girl kept asking, if he's so wonderful, why aren't you together? The family talks about it. You're in Birmingham and he's up here. I heard he hurt you. Tears started to form, but she held them back. He didn't hurt me. He hit me once, thinking it was self-defense. He's not with me now because I was weak and did something that made him lose respect for me. I'm trying to make it right. Hildy had been listening closely. Melissa Sue, watch what you say and how you act. Your Aunt Gwen needs a friend right now. Melissa Sue quickly apologized and gave her a hug. That little gesture made her tears fall. The girls all rushed in, hugging her one by one. For the first time, she could grieve openly, and it felt hard to stop. Later, as she helped clean up, Hildy offered her some kind words. You made new friends today. You spoke the truth and took responsibility for your past. They respect that. Just be yourself, don't push too hard. They might see that as a northern thing, and it doesn't work well here. Just be you, and soon they'll warm up. Now you need to take some food home. I'll get the containers. Hildy hugged her, and to her surprise, Joshua kissed her cheek, leaving everyone shocked. That small action made her place in the group clear. As she drove away, she thought about all the social events she had been to over the years. Fancy parties, brunches, dinners, and important lunches. None of those compared to sitting at a picnic table with people she loved, who treated her like family. They didn't care about her money or status. To them, she was just Aunt Gwen. The atmosphere at work that Monday was heavy, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. She was getting ready for another day of protecting the public when Paul called her into his office. Karen was there, and she had a feeling something bad was about to happen. Paul looked unsure and talked aimlessly. She let him speak for a while before interrupting. For goodness sake, Paul, what's going on? He sighed heavily. Let me fill you in. We have problems here. We're in the middle of a drug route. They bring drugs in through the swamps and coastal areas of Louisiana and Mississippi, then take them north. There are many highways running right through town. We've made some arrests and seized drugs, but that's just a small part of the problem. We've seen more street-level sales recently and learned that a cartel has decided to take over. They are pushing out local dealers, and fights over territory are starting. It's getting messy. On Saturday, one of our deputies stopped a car swerving all over the road. The driver was high and had enough cocaine to face serious charges. The driver is Raul Escobar, the nephew of the cartel leader, Don Vincente. They have a bad history in Mexico with harming police and lawyers involved with their business. Rumors are already spreading. This could be serious. It might take months before the case goes to trial, but for now, he is in jail without bail because he is not a citizen and could easily run away. I want you to take the case. You have no family here, so they can't harass you much. Will you do it? She sat quietly for a moment, thinking. So basically, I'm being used as bait. I'll be gone in a few months, and nobody here will pay the price, except maybe you and the deputy. Is this your way of playing it safe? He looked a bit embarrassed. Yes, that's it in short. They can't scare you. If they check your background, I doubt they'd be foolish enough to threaten your father. If they look into your husband, they'll find the same thing. We will keep an eye on you. Do you think you can handle it? She smiled. Just give me the file. Hardy was not in the best mood. His cousin and close friend had just come over, and the news wasn't great. They hugged and caught up on each other's lives. Harry was married and had 2 sons. His wife wasn't very fancy, but the love he felt for her made her beautiful to him. Harry had been his right-hand man when they were younger. He was not much of a planner, but he was good at getting things done. He was loyal and always spoke his mind. They made a great team. When Hardy joined the military, another cousin named Roy took his place. He didn't have Hardy's skill or style, but he was effective. Now, Harry came to Hardy with a problem. Roy had his eye on the armored car that delivered money to the local Walmart. Harry heard it could be worth $200,000 to $300,000, and that made it very tempting. Roy had a plan and wanted Harry to help with it. As soon as Harry started explaining, Hardy stopped him. "Hold on. I'm an officer of the court now. If you tell me about anything illegal, I have to report it." Hardy noticed Harry looked disappointed. "But if you're talking about a made-up situation and want to know my opinion as a lawyer, I can help." "Thanks, Hardy. I have a body shop and I'm doing well enough to take care of my family. I'm too old for crazy stuff like what Roy is thinking. But if this was real, do you think it would work?" Hardy looked carefully at the plan. "Whoever does this could face at least 7 years in federal prison. This is like robbing a bank. The plan wouldn't work. There's too much time needed. Those armored cars have GPS, cameras, and alarms. They're a lot tougher than before. Whoever tries this would need to be in and out in under 10 minutes, including dealing with the guards and getting the money. That's too tight of a schedule. Tell whoever made this plan to forget it and find an easier job." "Thanks, Hardy. I really appreciate it." They shook hands, and Hardy gave Harry some cards. "Here, if any of the cousins get into trouble, tell them I'm their lawyer and nothing else until I get there. Got it?" Harry decided not to take the job based on Hardy's advice. But Roy got 3 of the younger cousins to do it anyway. They were caught by the police in less than an hour. Hardy helped them plead guilty. They had no choice. They were too loyal to snitch on anyone, insisting it was their own idea. Each of them received 7 to 10 years in federal prison. Roy was upset and sent a message to Hardy to stay out of his business. Hardy replied that Roy needed to stop making plans that got kids in trouble. Roy was worried. The younger cousins were starting to question him. Things had been tough lately. With a new player in town, less money coming in, and no good solutions ahead, he felt like Hardy was working against him. "I need to teach that guy a lesson. But if I mess with Hildy or Joshua, the other cousins might make things really hard for us. I wish I had something I could use against him." Ronnie Wilkes was his tough guy. He wasn't the smartest, but he was big and very strong. He didn't like Hardy because Hardy didn't seem scared of him. "Well, cousin, there's always his ex-wife. They're not together anymore, but he hates when people touch what's his," Ronnie said. Roy scoffed. "I'm not going all the way to where he lives to bother his ex. I need something nearby." Ronnie smiled. "You don't have to go far. She works as an assistant district attorney right here in Jefferson County. My cousin Bertie told me that, but I had to promise not to tell anyone. She's using her maiden name, Canaday. If we visit her, it might send a message to him." Harry, who had been listening, spoke up. "I think that's the dumbest idea you've ever had, Roy. They call him hard-ass for a reason. This could backfire badly and make you look stupid." Ronnie laughed. "He's old news. He's just a lawyer. How tough can he be? I bet he's soft and can't even walk up the courthouse steps without getting tired." Harry chuckled. "Keep thinking that. I'll put that on your tombstone. I've seen him and he's bigger than before, but go ahead, try it. When this plan goes south, I'll be there to say I told you so." With that, Harry left, still laughing. They watched for her. She was very routine, always getting home around 6. She hardly went out. Roy couldn't believe how easy it was to get her to let them in. They just said they were cousins with a message from Hardy, and she happily opened the door. Gwen was uneasy about the 2 men, but when they said they were cousins and mentioned Hardy, she took off the safety chain and let them enter. It all happened so quickly she didn't have time to react. The big guy grabbed her and tied her to a kitchen chair with a zip tie, then stuffed a gag in her mouth. The older one took a chair and sat right in front of her. "Listen, miss, I need some promises from your husband, and then we'll leave quietly. If he gives us any trouble, things could get rough for you. I'll start by letting Ronnie get to know you better. If I take off your gag, will you promise not to scream? I need you to talk so Hardy knows I'm really here with you, okay? Now I'm going to call him. Just sit tight." She nodded. When the gag came off, she smiled, which made Roy uneasy. "You know who my husband is, and you're stupid enough to do this? I hope he lets me watch when he gets to you. If you expect me to call him, you're wrong. I don't have his numbers." Trying to sound more sure of himself, he told her not to worry. He had the number. "I'm going to put it on speaker so he can hear us," he said. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hardy Wilkes," came the voice on the other end. "Hardy, it's Roy. I hear you've been getting into my business. I don't like that. I have someone here who wants to say hi." He held the phone out to her. Looking right into his eyes, she said, "Hardy, darling, I hope you deal with this." Roy grabbed the phone back. "That's right. I'm here with your woman. We don't want this to get messy, do we? Why would it get messy, Roy? Great minds think alike. I wanted to talk, so I dropped by your house. You have a lovely family. She had never seen a man look so scared. Now, Hardy, don't. But Hardy didn't let him finish. Your wife makes great pie. I have a little surprise for you. I've got your daughter June sitting on my lap on the porch. I had to come out here to get a signal. She's quite the mover for a 6-year-old. Here, June Bug, tell your daddy what I brought you. A cheerful little voice chimed in. Daddy, guess what? Uncle Hardy got us tickets to Six Flags. They have rides and everything. He says we're going this weekend. Isn't Uncle Hardy great? Are you coming home soon, Daddy? That's enough, June Bug. Let me talk to your daddy. See if your mom will give me another piece of that pecan pie, okay? They heard her run off, calling for her mother. Roy spoke, his voice shaky. Now, Hardy, let's not make this too serious. Shut up, jerk. You need to spend more time with your family. Kids like June Bug can disappear any day. And your oldest girl, I bet she's turning heads already. You should keep an eye on her. Pretty girls can find trouble if you're not careful. Do you hear me, Roy? Roy opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. Gwen couldn't help but say something. I think he hears you just fine, dear. Good. Now you should get home to your family. You're going to Six Flags this weekend. 3 days and 2 nights all paid for. A client gave it to me as a bonus, and I don't have a family to enjoy it with. I'll call June Bug on Monday. If she doesn't say she had a great time, I'll be angry. You really don't want to see me angry. And Roy, you're right. Your business isn't mine, and I don't mess with that anymore. But my business is my own, so don't get involved. Until I get the divorce papers, she's still my concern. If Ronnie is there, tell him if she says he messed up her hair, I'll cut his hand off, 1 finger at a time. He can't hide anywhere, and he can't hide behind anyone. Do you see what I mean? Roy finally found his words again. Whatever you want, Hardy, just take it. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. If you need anything, just let me know. Please, leave my family out of this. He was close to tears. Well, Roy, I'm glad we cleared that up. But remember, if June is not happy this weekend, I'll be asking you why. And I'm taking the rest of this pie home if I can convince your wife. Say hi to your family for me when you get back. You really don't know how lucky you are. Then the call ended. They were very careful as they took off her restraints. Please tell him we didn't mean any harm and that we didn't hurt you. Please. She chuckled. You fools. If he had hesitated even for a moment, I'm sure I would have had a terrible night. I'm going to tell him you hurt me and that Ronnie got too close. Let me know which funeral home you want for your services and I'll send flowers. Now get out of my house. They nearly ran out the door. She leaned against it, thinking about the redneck mafia that Hardy had built before he was sent off to the military. He still cares about me. He threatened someone for my sake. I got to hear his voice. So, all in all, it was a good day. 6 months ago, this would have scared her. She went to bed and slept soundly. She got dressed, then changed, and dressed again for the reunion. Hildy said they would be outside a lot, so she needed to wear something comfy and light. She finally picked a simple white tank top and green shorts. It seemed like the right mix of comfortable and nice-looking. Her hair and makeup were harder to figure out. Since they would be outside, she kept her makeup light and styled her hair in a way that looked effortless. But every woman knew it took time to do. She found she liked having shorter hair. It was much easier than her long hair had been. She practiced what she would say to him if she got the chance. They were cooking whole pigs, chickens, and even some beef. When she arrived, 4 grills were cooking away, and the smell was amazing. Joshua was watching for her. She hoped he was happy to see her, but it might be because of the 5 cases of beer she brought, St. Pauli, of course. She had introduced it to him, and he almost started a fight with the guys at the kegs when he claimed it was better than Bud. Hildy grabbed her, handed her an apron, and pushed her into the kitchen. A bunch of people shouted, "Hey, Aunt Gwen!" many of whom she was sure she hadn't met before. They put her on the slaw line, and for an hour and a half she chopped cabbage in a food processor. The men were setting up tables and carrying out the side dishes. She kept looking for Hardy. Hildy saw her looking. "Relax, hun. He'll be here." One of the cousins got into a small problem, and he needed to go fix it. He was on his way. "Why don't you freshen up?" someone said. "This kitchen hasn't done much for your hair." So much for her plan to keep things simple. She gave up, brushed her wet hair into a ponytail, and hoped it would look okay. Finally, everyone came together for the blessing. They always have a blessing at these gatherings, no matter what you believe. A few cousins had a band. They set up a stage for later and handed a microphone to Hildy. I'm going to do my mini Pearl act. Howdy! Her voice bounced off the hills. A bunch of people answered with howdy back to her. She raised her hands in pretend shock. You all forgot! I'm part of your family. I know you can be louder than that. We aren't going to eat until I'm happy with the noise. Howdy! They probably heard her in the next town. That's better. Thanks for coming. There's nothing better than family. Before we eat, remember to thank the cooks. Some have been here for hours. And don't forget to thank the ladies who brought side dishes and those amazing desserts. Now, let's bow our heads and remember those who can't be here and those who will never join us again. Keep them in your hearts. After a brief moment of silence, she continued, God, thank you for friends and family. We are nothing without them. Bless the new people in our family and keep those who have passed close to you. Help those who are lost find their way home. Help those who are away find their way back to us. Help us be better people. Bless this food and everyone here. Amen! Everyone shouted, Amen! And then rushed to the tables. Gwen stood still, touched by the words of the blessing, and made her own silent prayer, feeling it deeply for the first time. Hildy hugged her. Come on, girl, before they eat it all. Gwen wasn't sure what she ate. There was something called burgoo, made with mutton, which a cousin from Tennessee brought. Another cousin from South Carolina brought Brunswick stew, which tasted good once you got past how it looked like it had already been eaten. There were about 20 kinds of homemade barbecue sauce, from sweet to really spicy. They had green beans, butter beans, black-eyed peas, lima beans, corn on the cob, fried corn, and creamed corn. They also had kale, collards, mixed greens, sweet potatoes, and sweet potato casserole. There was potato salad, fried potatoes, and hash brown casserole. Fried squash, okra, sliced onions, sliced tomatoes, and cucumbers filled the tables. There were pickles made from almost anything. Some dishes were a mystery to her. Gwen couldn't understand how the tables were still standing with so much food. And the desserts, oh my, carrot cake, chocolate cake, fresh coconut cake, stack cake from the mountains, upside-down pineapple cake, banana bread, apple pie, both fried and baked, peach pie, coconut pie, chocolate pie, pecan pie, strawberry pie, blueberry pie, cupcakes, cookies, and colorful jelly molds. Just looking at all these treats made her feel a little heavy and worried about her health. But the health worries didn't stop anyone from digging in, so she took a plate and joined the fun. They knew she wasn't used to these foods, so they enjoyed showing them to her. They encouraged her to try Cousin Fred's fried chicken, Aunt Zelda's carrot salad, the greens, and the beans. It got a bit loud and teasing as they felt more relaxed around her. Try this spicy sauce, Yankee girl. Don't be scared. Yes, it's hot. Drink this beer. It will help. Don't upset her, just eat it. Hildy saved her from this. Stop it, or she'll be called the girl who ate Alabama. She'll be here a while, she can try it all later. Let her breathe. Hildy took her hand and led her inside. Hardy just called, he's stuck in traffic. He'll be here in about an hour. Why not make him a plate of his favorite food and set it aside? It'll give you a chance to chat with him. Come on, I'll help. They ended up making 3 plates, one with meat, one with veggies, and one with dessert. Hildy smiled. There's an old saying about love and food. Feed him this, and he'll be too full to leave and too happy to complain. Well, not too much. Gwen smiled, too. She loosened her shorts belt a little. They had stretchy fabric, and she felt packed after eating, so she hoped they wouldn't fall off. This was a choice she quickly regretted. An hour passed, and still no Hardy. He called Hildy, saying he might not get back in time for dinner. Hildy insisted he come, if only for the plates of food she had kept for him. He promised, but said it would be at least another 2 hours. The older family members settled down, happy and full. The younger ones tidied up a bit before relaxing, too. The kids were full of energy and buzzed around. Gwen and Hildy walked around, chatting with everyone. Gwen felt like she was running for office, shaking hands and saying hi to people, but she didn't mind. At some point, she lost track of Hildy and found herself talking to a cousin closer to her age. They spotted a group their age by the creek. They went over and learned about the family drink, ginger fizz. It was half homemade corn liquor and half spicy ginger ale. It was strong stuff. Gwen tried a sip, and it felt like her mouth was on fire. She turned pale and then bright red. When she finally began gasping for air, everyone burst out laughing. Don't worry, Aunt Gwen, it will stop burning in a minute. Don't be upset with us. Everyone new to the family goes through this. Here, try this. It's what it's supposed to taste like. She looked at it nervously. She had the same drink base, but with slices of lemon, orange, and lime, plus a few cherries on top. She took a sip and really liked the taste. In an hour, she had 3 drinks. What she didn't realize was that they still had a lot of alcohol in them, and she was starting to feel lightheaded. She went to the bathroom and talked to Aunt Hildy, who told her that Hardy would arrive soon. She made her way back to the group by the creek, stopping now and then to chat with friends. Overall, she was feeling great. Seeing Hardy would make a good day even better. The band started to play country and classic rock music. They weren't too bad. The sun was beginning to set, giving everything a warm, golden look. Then everything changed. Crystal Ann was at a table with her new friends, chatting with a tall guy wearing a cap. She was laughing and touching his shoulder. She was the last person Gwen wanted to see. Crystal's long red hair shone in the sun, and she wore a tiny white top and shorts that looked like they were nearly nothing. Every guy around was staring at her. At least she wasn't near Hardy. Then everything fell apart. Crystal playfully knocked the cap off the guy's head, showing off his shaggy, light blonde hair, which she affectionately ruffled. As Gwen approached the table, the guy turned, and she found herself looking right into Hardy's eyes. His hair was longer, and he had a short beard, but those cool gray eyes felt like they were looking straight into her. Gwen lost it. All her plans, all her dreams, and he was with her. She didn't even remember starting it. "Get your hands off my husband!" she yelled. Without thinking, she grabbed Crystal's hair and pulled her back. Crystal stumbled, and they both fell into the creek. Joshua had made a small pool for the younger kids, and it was about waist deep. Gwen held on to Crystal's hair as they hit the cold water. Even in early September, it felt freezing. Crystal was struggling to stand up. Gwen pulled her head back under the water, and in the chaos, she yanked off Crystal's top. By this time, a crowd had gathered, and Gwen tried to climb out while Crystal crouched in the water, hiding her chest. She laughed and twirled her top as she moved up the bank. Suddenly, Crystal surged out of the water, shouting a lot of angry words, and grabbed Gwen by her shorts. The loosened belt caused them to slip down, leaving her in just a lacy black thong. She wore it hoping to catch Hardy's eye. It was one of his favorites. Gwen slipped back into the water, her shorts getting tangled around her legs, and Crystal gave her a hard slap. In response, Gwen scratched Crystal's neck, making her bleed. They were rolling around in the water, both now half submerged and struggling. Somehow, half of her tank top was gone, and so was her bra. She could hear the crowd yelling and clapping, but it didn't matter. She was determined to fight this girl, no matter what. Then a loud voice called out, "You girls, stop that right now! Shame on both of you!" To make her point, she picked up a cooler and dumped it on them, spilling cans everywhere. The girls froze in surprise. It was Hildy, and she looked very angry. She turned to 2 of her bigger cousins. "Take off your shirts, now!" They quickly tossed their t-shirts to her. Hildy threw them down to the girls. "Put these on and go back to the house right now, or I'll show everyone what a real fight looks like. Now!" They scrambled into the shirts and raced toward the house, holding them down. Hildy was right behind them. Joshua was waiting and waved them inside. Hildy started pacing in front of them. "I hope you're proud. The cousins will remember this reunion for a long time. What a way for 2 young women to behave." It felt like they were back in elementary school. Crystal Ann said, "She started it." Gwen shot back, "No, you started it by touching my husband. If I see you near him again, you won't like what happens." "Forget you. You lost him when you couldn't stay faithful. At least I would treat him right." That hurt Gwen more than she wanted to admit. "Forget you too. Until the divorce is done, he's still mine. I plan to stop the divorce so we can be together again." Crystal laughed. "Yeah, right. Just as soon as I get my snowball stand in hell." "That's enough." "Crystal, go with Joshua. He'll take you to my room. You can find some clothes to wear home. They might be a little big, but it will have to work." After Crystal left, Hildy looked at Gwen with sadness. "Well, if you aimed to impress him, you did." Gwen started to cry again. "Is he still here? Do you think he'd take an apology?" "Sorry, dear. He's already gone. You 2 really embarrassed him, and I didn't think that was possible." She cried out, "I've ruined everything. I had one chance, and I messed it up. I might as well give up." Hildy gently patted her head. Don't be too quick to give up. You fought for him. He'll appreciate that. This fight may have even helped you. Gwen embraced Hildy for a moment, then pulled back. With a small smile, she asked, So, did I win? Hildy grinned back. I'd say it was a draw, but a fun little fight. Gwen let out a giggle. What would my dad think if he saw his little princess like this? I bet he would be really surprised. Hildy looked uneasy. Sweetheart, you should know. She stopped talking and glanced over at Gwen's shoulder. What is it, Aunt Hildy? She heard someone clear their throat and thought Joshua had come back. She turned around. Daddy? There he was, Greg Canaday, a well-known figure in Boston, a strong believer in old-fashioned values and a respected lawyer. He was staring at his muddy daughter, who was wearing a big T-shirt. What are you doing here? I was invited. Someone named Hildy called me. She told me how well you were doing and how much you missed me. I thought I would come down to visit and enjoy some southern food and kindness. Daddy, it's not what it looks like. How do you know what I think it looks like? It looks like my daughter got into a fight with one of my workers. A real cat fight over a guy. It wasn't that bad, Not that bad? You two were rolling in the water and mud in front of at least 100 people, hardly dressed. It looked like a show from Jerry Springer. Daddy, I'm really sorry. Sorry? Is that how a well-raised member of Boston society should act? Oh, come on! He suddenly started laughing hard, shaking with joy, unable to stop. Hildy came back into the room, and at first she smiled, but then she started laughing too. Wow! I send you down here and you really get into it. Your grandmother would be proud. Gwen was very confused. What does my grandmother have to do with this? Your grandmother is from here, Jefferson County. You're a quarter Alabamian. Her name was Virginia Howe from the Birmingham Howes. Your grandfather worked with us here and fell in love with her. Her parents were not happy. A Yankee! How dare she! But they loved each other until he died 27 years later. She was never the same after he passed. That's where your trust fund comes from, old money from Steel. She would have been proud of you today. Why would she be proud? I embarrassed myself and pushed Hardy even further away. I made things worse. Maybe not, girl, Hildy added. Hardy just called to check on you. He said that if any video shows up, someone will pay for it. I think there are a lot of phones being cleared right now. Gwen gasped. Her big moment could live forever. It couldn't get any more complicated. But it did. Her dad stayed for 4 days with her, watching her in court, taking her for lunch and dinner. He spent some time with his old friend Paul, talking about things they would not share with anyone else. He had to admit that she had grown up a bit. That made him happy. The only problem between them was Hardy. He didn't understand why she wanted him back. To him, she had hurt him 2 times, no matter what the reasons might be. Think about it this way, he said. Have you ever heard the story about the woman and the snake? She shook her head. In the story, a woman finds a snake that has fallen from a wall. The snake is cold and can't live, so he asks the woman to help him. He speaks nicely and is so beautiful that she picks him up and takes him home. She puts him by the fire to warm him up. She feeds him. She pets him and tells him how lovely he is. Then, summer comes. The sun is out, it's warm, and the snake no longer needs her. One day while she holds him, he bites her on the neck. As she lies on the ground hurt, she looks at the snake and asks, Why? I saved you. I kept you alive. Why did you bite me? The snake just stares at her and then slithers away. Woman, you knew I was a snake before you picked me up. He paused. Do you get it? You knew Allan was a snake, but you still did drugs with him in Paris. You still let him in your home even while trying to get Hardy back. What happened to you was not okay, but you knew what he was before you let him close, so take some responsibility for that. That's exactly how Hardy feels. You let a snake into your life knowing what he was. She sighed. Am I going to win him back? He didn't want to say it, but she needed to hear the truth. I don't think so. You hurt him badly. Yes, you didn't know his past or how he would react, but you still cheated on him. And let's be real, before that happened, you didn't treat him like a loving wife. When did you stop respecting him? I never stopped respecting him, she shouted. But I did take him for granted. I thought his love would get us through anything. Even cheating on him? No, you know I didn't want that to happen. You know that. And I was never going to let him find out. But it did happen, and he found out. Deep down, didn't you think that even if he found out, you could make him forgive you? She couldn't meet his gaze. That told him all he needed to know. He sighed. There's more news. Hardy is tired of waiting for the divorce to be settled. He told his lawyer that if things don't change soon, he will fire him. Ivan is trying his best, but he can't hold up much longer. She felt like she might faint. It was about to be over. She just hung her head and cried. Greg left the next day. He stopped by to see Hardy on his way out. "How are you doing?" Hardy just grunted. As well as can be expected. Lots of cases to review, many people needing help. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Are you still planning to get a divorce from her? You know I am. Is there nothing that can change your mind? She has changed a lot in the last 8 months. I really think she loves you. I still love her. Maybe I always will. But love isn't always enough. I need to trust her, and that can't happen again. I'm not just talking about her cheating. I feel like she has been lying to me since we got married. She never wanted the same things I did, even after we talked about it, and she said she agreed. She never wanted to settle down, and I honestly believe she never wanted kids. The best thing I can do now is move on. I still want a family, and time is passing by. I understand. But tell me, son, was all you really wanted just to have kids? In my view, you both started your marriage with lies and half-truths. You should have shared your past and what you wanted in life. She should have been honest about her feelings towards having a family and her problems with drugs and cheating. She made big mistakes, but you also have to take some blame. If you both had been truthful, you likely would never have married and wouldn't be in this situation now. Hardy opened his mouth to speak, but the man waved him off. Stop. I shouldn't have said that. But you are both important to me. You are like the son I never had, and I regret losing you. Let's stop talking about that. What I really wanted to discuss was the new case Gwen is working on. He explained the Escobar case in detail, highlighting the danger she might be in. Paul promised me he would keep her safe, but you know how tight law enforcement is stretched these days. Can you do me a favor and keep an eye on her? I know you have the means to help her more than they can. Gwen told me about your chat with your cousin Roy. Hardy smiled at the memory. He did call the next week, and little June wouldn't stop talking. Her mother promised him many pies to thank him for helping Roy see how important a happy home is. I'm not foolish. I grew up hearing stories about you. All I have to say when he starts to slack off is that it's time to bake a pie and he gets right to work. Thank you. Do you like peaches? Cousin Ronnie was a different story. He bragged a lot, and Hardy caught him in one of those old bars with sawdust on the floor. No air conditioning, and coolers working on ice instead of power. Ronnie saw him and made a big mistake. He started bragging about how he would fight Hardy. Hardy quickly slapped him. Then he turned and walked outside, calling back, "Come on out, you loudmouth. I won't hit you hard, but I will slap you around until you cry. I might just treat you like a child before I'm done. You might even wet yourself." Ronnie had drunk enough beer to make him act foolish. He stormed towards Hardy, shouting loudly, "I'm going to get you!" Hardy just looked bored. He stepped out of Ronnie's way and gave him a light slap as he passed, pushing him with his other hand. Ronnie fell face first onto the rough gravel. He quickly stood up, furious. Hardy didn't move away. Instead, he charged in and gave Ronnie a strong headbutt. Ronnie's nose squashed and blood flew out. He stood stunned, arms hanging down, while Hardy took the chance to hit him back and forth across the face. The pain made tears roll down Ronnie's cheeks. "Wow!" one person shouted. "He's crying like a baby!" This made Ronnie even angrier. He had some skill from his past, but was no match for Hardy. He did manage to hit Hardy a few times, but those hits didn't bother Hardy at all. Then Hardy started hitting Ronnie in the stomach and kidneys. No one could take that much pain, and Ronnie's bladder gave in. He fell onto the gravel, barely awake. Hardy lifted Ronnie by his shirt like it was nothing and pushed him against a truck. "You've cried and lost control. Do I need to spank you now, or do we understand each other?" Ronnie nodded in defeat. "Seems like we're done here. Remember what I said would happen if you messed with my girl?" Ronnie's eyes widened, and he tried to speak through his swollen lips. Hardy interrupted him. "Shut up! It's time to face the music!" His hand moved, and a small knife clicked open. Now tears were really flowing, not from pain, but fear. Hardy put the knife next to Ronnie's little finger and smiled. Ronnie heard a snap and felt terrible pain, but when he looked down, his finger was still there, just bent awkwardly. Hardy put the knife away. "If I hear you're even close to her again, I'll come back, and it will be every finger on both hands. Got it?" Ronnie nodded. Hardy looked at the crowd. "Anyone want to say something?" Suddenly, everyone seemed very interested in looking at anything but Hardy. "Okay, then. Can someone do me a favor and take him to see Doc Thomas? He's used to this kind of stuff, and we'll keep quiet. I'd appreciate it. Just tell him to send me the bill. Have a good night." He got into the big truck he had bought when he came back and drove off, throwing gravel all over Ronnie. It ruined Ronnie's reputation. No one feared him anymore, and he was out as the enforcer. Roy replaced him with a younger cousin who had just returned from Iraq. Ronnie became a runner, doing small jobs for the group. He thought a lot, trying to find ways to get back at Hardy Wilkes. Doc Thomas was Karen Thomas's grandfather. He told her secretly that hard-ass Wilkes was back and angrier than before, which meant more work for him. Later, Karen asked Gwen if she had ever met Ronnie Wilkes. Gwen made a disgusted face. "Yes, he and a guy named Roy came to see me not long ago. They wanted to connect with the family, I guess, but I did not like either of them. I don't think they will come back." Karen smiled. "You probably won't see Ronnie again. Someone who looks like your husband really hurt him the other day. He's all bruised up and has a broken finger. They said the guy just slapped him until he cried and then hit him in a sensitive spot, making him lose control. Too bad he didn't kill him. That guy's a real waste of space." Gwen smiled as she said this, but her eyes made Karen feel uneasy. Hardy promised Greg that he would keep an eye on her. "I have a few cousins who are out of work. They'll take care of her." Greg wanted to pay the cousins, but Hardy refused. "You can't pay family for something they would do for free. That's not how it works in my family." Greg insisted. "Don't call it pay. Say it's just for expenses. I want them focused on her, not worrying about money." Hardy reluctantly agreed, saying he would handle it. Greg brought up another topic. "Since we're talking about money, I have some papers for you to sign. The prenup you fought so hard against? It's in effect now, even if you don't get divorced. You have proof that she cheated, and she has admitted it. That's $38 million for you. She stayed faithful for about 2 years. Now, before you get upset, it's legal, and the money is yours. If you don't want it, you can give it away, but you can't give it back to Gwen." Hardy got angry, but Greg just smiled. "You don't have a choice. You're rich now. Welcome to the club." They had a quiet dinner, each lost in their own thoughts, and Hardy drove Greg to the airport. In the first meeting with Raul Escobar and his team of lawyers, things went as expected. They claimed everything from tricking him to bad police work to police violence, insisting that all charges should be dropped and their client released immediately. Raul sat there with a smug look on his face. Karen just listened quietly as they shared their demands, then she laughed. "He got caught driving drunk. It's all on tape, including his angry words and threats to the arresting officer. It's his first offense in the U.S., but it's a serious crime. He's going to prison for at least 5 to 7 years if he takes a deal. Fight it in court, and I'll aim for the max sentence, 25 years to life. It's your call. Let me know what you decide, soon." She stood up and walked away, leaving them speechless. Don Vincente was furious when he found out. Who did this woman think she was? He was determined to make her pay. He called for his private jet and flew to Birmingham. Vincente never did things halfway. He made sure to learn everything about anyone he saw as a threat to his time or money. What he found out didn't make him happy. The woman was already rich, so money wouldn't scare her. Threats to her family wouldn't work either. Her mother was in France, married to a judge, and her father was even wealthier, well-liked, and very connected. Her soon-to-be ex-husband had a rough past, was now a lawyer, and had links to old crime partners that everyone knew were dangerous. He asked to meet with her and her boss. At first, he tried to work with her. "Please," he said, using his charm. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't even know the drugs were in the car he rented from a friend. "Let him come with me and reduce the charges for probation. I'll make sure he lives a good life and does good things. I can even arrange monthly drug tests for him." Gwen flushed with anger. How did he know about the drug tests? First, he didn't borrow the car, he rented it. His name is on the rental agreement. His fingerprints are all over the bags, and his saliva was found in one. He resisted arrest and tried to bribe the officers, even threatening them in your name. Even if we wanted to drop the charges, the deputy who arrested him is trained by Homeland Security and has federal powers. If we let him go, the feds would pick him up in no time. Cut your losses, Mr. Escobar. No lawyer can help him now. He should plead guilty. Vicente Escobar was used to having great power. Everyone south of the border feared him, even other cartels. Now this young woman was telling him he couldn't help his own nephew. She needed to learn a lesson, and he had just the right teachers in mind. Paul was upset after the meeting. That arrogant man. How dare he speak to us like that or hint at threats? He needs to understand what's happening. Gwen remained calm. Relax, Paul. I've seen his kind many times during contract talks. They truly believe that what they want is what's best for everyone involved. He'll soon see that this is not the same as down south. But none of my rivals in contract law were known for hurting anyone who stood in their way, so we should all be careful. The mood in the office was serious for a few days. Raul had faced a judge again, been denied bail once more, and now had to wait for trial in 3 months. Gwen returned to her regular work. Drug dealers, thieves, and other criminals needed her help. She made deals where she could and set court dates where she couldn't. Paul started letting her take on simpler cases to gain experience. Early on, she lost one case because of a mistake, and it made her feel embarrassed. After that, she focused hard on her research. If an arresting officer made any small mistake, she was quick to point it out. People began calling her a tough, cold woman, but no one questioned her results. One of her lighter moments happened when she had to talk to a man who had hurt one of his workers. Homer Big Daddy Johnson was loud, heavy-set, and unkempt. He weighed around 400 pounds, and his bad hygiene was talked about a lot. She almost lost her lunch when she walked into the interview room. He was too cheap to get a lawyer, so a young public defender was assigned to him. The young woman looked sick when Gwen walked in. He smirked at her, showing off his 3 gold teeth. Not wanting to stay in the room longer than needed, she got straight to the point. We have 3 witnesses all ready to testify. The woman involved has signed a complaint. You have a history, Mr. Johnson, all for hurting women. Take a deal, spend 6 months in jail, and go back to your life. If you give me any trouble, you're looking at 18 months to 3 years. And I can guess, Mr. Johnson, that prison food won't be to your liking, not to mention the strict rules about cleanliness. The public defender actually laughed, which made Big Daddy very angry. He glared at her. Girl, you're supposed to help me. Get me out of this mess. The young woman stepped back, frightened. He turned to Gwen. And you, I know who you are. I had a run-in with your husband back in the day. He cost me some good workers, and I said I'd get back at him. He leered at her, his bad breath almost making her gag. Maybe I'll use you as my worker. A good-looking woman like you would probably last a few years before being used up. I could make a lot of money before then. How would your husband feel about that? He leaned back, pleased with himself. Gwen's sweet smile almost made him nervous. If you faced my husband, he probably gave you a beating you wouldn't forget. I bet you haven't seen him lately. He's much bigger now, and it's not just extra weight. Thanks to me, he's not as nice as he once was. Maybe I should tell him what you said. Or maybe I'll just forget the deal, take care of you myself, and put you away for a few years. You probably can't even find yourself if you tried, but trust me, there will be people ready to help you. Who knows, when you get out, you might give your friends tips on how to do certain things. Have a nice day, Mr. Johnson. Hope you enjoy your new life. The public defender hurried after her. He wants the deal and said to tell you he was just joking about everything he said. Tell him it's a year now. Take it or leave it. She kept walking. He'll take it. Suddenly she pulled Gwen into a hug, which surprised her. Thanks, Aunt Gwen. I learned a lot from that. Gwen was amazed. Your last name is Chapman, right? Yes, ma'am. Grandpa Hardy was my great-aunt's brother-in-law. My grandmother on my dad's side is a Howe. You're related to most of the Chapmans, Grants, and Wilsons around here one way or another. It's not all Wilkes, you know. Oh, no, Gwen thought as she walked back to her office. I'm probably related to everyone in the state somehow. Paul caught up with her as she walked. Got a minute? She smiled. You're my boss. Do you think I'll tell you to go away? He wasn't sure if he should laugh or not, but followed her into her office. "Gwen, we have another case for you while we wait for the Escobar trial. This one is a bit tricky. Karen and I are both on murder trials, so you get this one." "Come on, you're hiding something. What's special about this one?" She didn't like how he was avoiding the topic. "It has to do with the three-strike law, and the person accused is Sam Wilkes." "Surely you know I'll do my best even if he's probably related to my husband, right?" Paul quickly assured her. "We know that. The thing is, his lawyer is going to make this a big deal about the three-strike law. He specializes in tough cases like this, and he often gets surprising results." "I don't mind. It'll make it more interesting. What's his name? Maybe I've heard of him." "Oh, you know him. His name is Hardy Wilkes." The color drained from her face. Hardy, her. Different sides in the same case. Could she control her emotions? Could she sit next to him for days without breaking down? Could she do her job well for the state? A calm feeling washed over her. "Can you take this on? Sarah has 5 more weeks of maternity leave, and Jimmy is still recovering from the softball accident. I just don't have anyone else." "Don't worry, Paul. I'll handle it. One way or another, he has to talk to me now." He felt a wave of relief. "Great. Here's the file. The kid doesn't deserve this, but the law is the law. Good luck." The file read like a sad story. Sam Wilkes, 23 years old. His first bad choice at 18 when he went for a joyride with his cousins. He wasn't driving. He wasn't even in the car when they took it, and everyone said so, but he was still there when the police stopped them. That got him a Class D felony and probation. His second bad choice came when he was 20. Again, it was because of his cousins. He got caught in a bar fight. He hit someone with a beer bottle, and the man got hurt badly, with a concussion and a broken skull. It was called assault with a deadly weapon. She read what he said in court. "I didn't know a beer bottle could do that," he said. "I see guys getting hit in the head in movies, and they just keep going. I was just trying to protect my cousin. I never meant to hurt him. I'm really sorry." The jury felt sorry for him, but he still served 6 months. That was a Class B felony. 2 months ago, he got caught for stealing a car. He took a classic Mercedes from his job. He was found the next day and said he was bringing it back. The car was worth over $100,000, which made it a Class A felony. 3 strikes. Life in prison, no changes. The thought made her feel sick. But the law was the law, and she had to follow it. He was out on bail since it was a non-violent crime. Hardy had paid for him, and he was living with Hardy now. Hardy sat, thinking hard. He couldn't see a way out for Sammy. The 3-strike law came from a response to a time of lawlessness by a previous government. It was popular for a while, but support had been fading. The high cost of long prison sentences, the rise in violence among prisoners, and cases like Sammy's had made the legal system frustrated. There was talk of a change to help nonviolent offenders, but nothing had really happened. A lot depended on the jury. Hardy knew if he could get enough everyday people, those who didn't trust the system, they might have a chance. There was still a small chance he could keep Sammy from a life sentence. He hoped the assistant district attorney, Jimmy Richards, would be understanding. A long trial would not help anyone. That might be good for him. Monday morning was rough. The weather was turning cold and rainy, signaling the start of winter in central Alabama. It felt like a perfect day to fight for a life, Hardy thought as he walked into the courthouse with Sammy, Crystal Ann, and an assistant who was studying jurors. They arrived at their table and set up their things. Strangely, the assistant district attorney hadn't shown up yet. Normally, the lawyers would chat a bit before the judge came in, but there was no chance for that today. Judge Harlan was a surprise. 74 years old, he had retired a few years ago, but still filled in now and then for minor trials when another judge was sick or on vacation. The server is overloaded or not ready yet. Wilkes said, "I promise to be professional and follow the rules. If you're scared, you can leave so your client can be taken care of." The judge then spoke up. "Mr. Wilkes, I expect you to speak calmly and respectfully. You seem like a big frog stuck on a fly. I remember how you used to lose your temper. This is my courtroom, and you both need to behave. If not, I will put you in the same jail cell. Do you understand, Mr. Wilkes?" "Yes, sir," he replied through gritted teeth. "Miss Cannaday, do you understand?" She smiled sweetly. "Yes, sir, but you are mistaken. I know him very well, actually. Wow, the judge thought. We haven't even started and things are already heating up. This could be quite interesting. He wrote a note to himself to learn more about the couple in front of him. Then he banged his gavel, and the jury selection began. Gwen quickly got the hang of picking jurors. She fought hard and managed to get a few serious types on her side, while he brought in some strong liberals. Most of the jurors, however, were just regular people, which might be good for Hardy. A jury that can't agree can be as good as a win. The first day of the trial set the mood. There was a lot of attention from the media and different legal groups. When it became known that it was wife against husband, it added even more interest. The drama began when the plea was made. "Not guilty," echoed in the room. No surprise there. It was a bit surprising when he asked for the charges to be dropped, saying the defendant had permission to drive, so it couldn't be stolen. Sam won the crowd's support, though not the jurors. He was clumsy, shy, and often looked like he might cry, making it hard for both sides to question him. "Yes, ma'am," he replied when asked if he took the car. "Did the owner of the car know you had it?" "No, ma'am." "So if he didn't know you took it, that means you stole it, right?" Hardy jumped up. "Objection? This question is leading, Your Honor." "Objection accepted. Be careful, Miss Cannaday." "Understood, Your Honor," she said. She turned to the jurors. "He admitted he took the car. He said the owner didn't know he had it. Think about that." Turning back to the judge, she said she had no more questions for now. She looked over at Hardy. "Your turn, Mr. Wilkes." With a big smile, Hardy stood up. "Thank you, Miss Cannaday." He focused on Sammy, who hung his head in fear and shame. "Sammy, look at me," Hardy said. Sam raised his head. "Sammy, did you take the car?" "Yes, sir, I did." "Why?" "Because it was dirty. It was terrible. A beautiful car, a classic. It should have been cared for and cleaned with love." "What did you do when you took it, aside from cleaning it all night? Did you take the car for a ride, mess up the gears, or break the engine? Where were you heading when they arrested you?" Jimmy looked scared. "I didn't even drive too fast. They knew I had the car. I called Will, the owner's son, and told him I cleaned it and was bringing it back. He got mad and said they didn't know who had it, and his dad called the police. He promised to call them back and say it wasn't stolen." He glanced at the judge. "I want to show the phone call as proof." He looked at Gwen, and she nodded. She had heard it already. "Hello, Jefferson County Sheriff Department." "Hi, this is Will Landis. My dad said his Mercedes was stolen yesterday. I just learned it wasn't stolen. Jimmy, the guy who helps out on our farm, took it home to clean it. He kept asking me to let him wash it, and I joked that when it looked really dirty, he could do it. I didn't know he planned to take it away. Anyway, he's bringing it back now." "Sir, are you taking back the stolen car report?" "Yeah, I guess I am. Sammy wouldn't steal anything. He just isn't that smart sometimes." "Okay, sir, I'll take back the report. Have a nice day." "Thanks, bye." He let the silence stay for a moment before he looked at Sammy. "How did you get in trouble if they knew you were bringing it back?" "I got stopped right after I talked to Will. Nobody knew it wasn't stolen, and they took me to jail. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. Finally, they told me to be quiet and call my lawyer, so when I got to jail, I called you." "Why did you call me?" He seemed surprised by the question. "Because you're my cousin, and I trust you, and you're the only lawyer I know." This made the crowd smile and chuckle a bit. "No more questions, Your Honor." The judge looked at his watch. "It's 3:30. Do you want to end early and get ready for closing arguments?" Gwen asked to present closing arguments before they ended. "I promise it will be quick. We might even get through both sides before 5. "May I begin?" The judge agreed. She stood up and walked in front of the jurors. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sammy seems like a kind and gentle person. I'm sure he wouldn't hurt anyone on purpose. No offense to the defendant, but he isn't the sharpest. I'm sure he meant well. He probably never intended to keep the car. If he had thought it through, he would have realized his friend Will was joking when he said he could clean the car when it got really dirty." She paused, and the jurors could see her sadness. "But the truth is, he took it. Will is only 16. He had no right to decide about the car. It belonged to his dad, an adult, and he asked us to charge Sammy. So we did. Sammy has definitely had a tough life. No guidance, poor choices, bad friends, and things he couldn't control have led him to be here with us today. His actions, whether planned or not, have brought him to this point. He has serious criminal records, and this could be his third offense if he is found guilty. The law says that after 3 strikes, a person could be locked away for life. The law was already in place before I moved to this great state, but let me remind you, it is still the law, and as a court officer, I must make sure it is followed. If you can, please show some kindness. I feel a lot of sympathy for him. I, too, have a heavy sentence hanging over me. She paused, and the judge frowned. He and Hardy looked a bit confused by her thoughts. Most of you know that the defense lawyer is my husband. We are not close right now, but we are still married. I hurt him badly. I made a terrible mistake that he cannot forgive. I was unfaithful, going against everything he believes in. It has been almost a year and he won't talk to me. I have tried everything I can to reach out to him, to ask for another chance. I've almost lost hope. My actions have left me with a life without hope or joy. While it's not the same, I understand what this young man is feeling. I have done my duty. I have shared the facts as they are. I spoke of the punishment, and the judge will explain the details to you. All I ask is that you find a way to show a little mercy to a young man who doesn't deserve to be stuck in prison for life. Thank you for your time. May you find the strength to make a fair choice. She looked at the judge, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution rests. A heavy silence filled the room before the judge slammed his gavel down. Miss Cannaday, I don't know if I should praise you or scold you. Don't think I didn't notice your clever little trick at the end. That was your only chance. If you pull something like that again, I will not be kind. Understand? Yes, Your Honor, I'm sorry. All right, then. He glanced at his watch. Court is adjourned until 9 tomorrow morning. Gwen left, not looking at Hardy. If she had, she would have seen him with his face in his hands, fighting back tears. Good morning, Your Honor, Counselor, and members of the jury. Yesterday, you heard the opposing counsel make a heartfelt closing statement, trying to appeal to your feelings. I agree with her on many important points. The 3-strike law is not fair. It is cruel punishment. It should only apply to a few very dangerous criminals, not to send a 23-year-old away for life just for cleaning a car. That is wrong. Look at him, ladies and gentlemen. He looks terrified. 12 people he has never met before now have the power to decide if he lives or dies. If he goes to prison, he will hope for miracles at first. After a couple of years, he will start to lose his spark. By the 5th year, the light in his eyes will fade. By the 10th year, he will be like a shell of a person, not knowing how to live outside. He would be 33 with about 40 more years to go. Yes, he took the car, but he thought he had permission. The teenage son is ready to say he thought it was okay for him to wash the car. He was almost back when he got stopped by the police. If the dad hadn't been so upset that someone took his pride and joy, the charges could have been dropped. He is a good kid, just not ready to grow up yet. He took the car and admitted it. This is just a small issue that got blown out of proportion. Find him guilty of something, but don't ruin a good person. Think about it in money terms. It costs about $30,000 a year to keep a prisoner fed and taken care of. As they age, the cost only goes up. Sammy will likely live at least 50 more years. That means it will cost the state between $1.2 to $1.6 million to punish him just for taking a car without asking. Imagine the good things that money could do, like fixing roads, building new schools, or helping people in need. Does this law seem right to you now? He walked back to his table, then turned to talk to the judge and jury again. With your patience, Your Honor, my smart opponent made some good points. She might think she is serving a life sentence, but she is young, lively, and very wealthy compared to most of us. She can fly to Paris for lunch and be back for dinner. For her, that cost is like us walking to the cafe down the street for lunch specials. Sammy won't have that ease. When the prison doors close, his life as he knows it is over. While she wonders which famous designer will create her new dress, he will worry about being hurt in the prison showers. That's a huge difference, wouldn't you agree? And if Sammy does not end up in prison for life, he will still live a hard life like I do. He is dealing with a car. I am dealing with a woman. We both knew these things were too good for us, but we wanted to hold on to them, even if it hurt us in the end. That's our life sentence. Remembering for a brief moment how good it felt to be close to them, knowing deep down that they would never really be ours. Thank you, jury, for your time and service. I don't feel jealous of your job. The defense is finished, Your Honor. Darn you, Hardy Wilkes, she thought. If I had $1 for every tear I cried for you, I would be rich again. No one talked about her tears as the jury listened to instructions and left the room. 5 hours later, they had a decision. Sammy was found guilty of misusing a vehicle, which is a minor crime. He got 6 months in a low-security prison that cleaned state cars. The judge thought that was right. Hardy made Sammy shake hands with everyone and thank them. The jurors, the judge, even Gwen, who surprised everyone by giving him a hug. The whole room watched quietly as Gwen walked up to Hardy with her hand out. He took it without thinking. Good job, counselor. Justice was done today. Just so you know, I've decided to stop fighting the divorce. You can be free now, I won't stop you. But if I thought we could be together again, I would beg you right here on the steps of the courthouse for a chance to talk. Goodbye, Hardy. I love you. The judge saw and heard this. It felt wrong. Everyone but the stubborn Hardy could see it. He needed to learn more about these two and should not wait any longer. Greg wondered why the judge from Alabama wanted to talk. He had left a message saying he needed a return call right away. Greg knew it was about Hardy or Gwen. He wasn't too worried about Hardy, but he had real concerns for Gwen. She had called him, asking him to tell Ivan to just let it go. It was over for good. He could hear the sadness and giving up in her voice. Are you sure, honey? I know he still loves you, but he won't admit it. It doesn't matter if he loves me anymore, Dad. He'll never forgive me. Every time he looks at me, he sees Allan and me together. He can't forgive me, and I can't live like this anymore. He felt a deep sadness for Hardy, Gwen, and even for himself. He had really hoped they would get back together. He dialed the number, and an elderly man answered. Good evening. This is Greg Canaday, returning a phone C. Boy, I was about to give up on you. The judge sounded impatient. You don't know me, but I know your daughter and your soon-to-be ex-son-in-law quite well. I was the judge in her last case. I was glad to see she was happy even though she lost. Did you see it? Greg had followed it closely. There were already articles in the newspapers in Alabama calling to change the three-strike law. Even the most traditional papers were saying changes might be a good idea. There were several pictures of Hardy and Gwen in the local news. Yes, I did. I was proud of them both. Good. Listen, son, I'm 74 years old. I won't be around much longer. Before I go, I want one last chance to do something good. Those kids need to stay together no matter how much they fight it. I have an idea. Will you help me? Greg thought about it. Did they really need to stay together? Did he have the right to get involved in their lives again? Yes and no, but that didn't stop him. I'm in, Judge. What's your plan? He listened as the judge explained his idea, and Greg's smile grew. He was excited to meet the judge. Even if the plan didn't work, it would be fun to watch. He flew down on Friday and spent the weekend with the judge. They talked about different ideas and finally came up with a plan they could all agree on. Hildy said it best. I think things will get exciting next week. Greg visited Gwen and surprised her by taking her to the best restaurant in Birmingham. Honey, I can't tell you how proud I am of you. I had doubts when I sent you here, but you have proved me wrong. You are not a spoiled girl anymore. You are a mature woman and a great lawyer. He didn't know how much his praise meant to her. It showed that her hard work mattered. Thank you, Dad. Hearing that means a lot to me. He looked surprised that his words affected her so much. That said, Gwen, I'm letting you off your promise. You can come back to Boston whenever you want. The partners and I agree you will be even more valuable than before. Also, your trust fund is available whenever you want it. Tears filled her eyes, and her emotions showed on her face. With a strong voice, she responded, filling him with pride. Thanks, Dad, but I owe Paul 10 more weeks, and honestly, I like it here. Release the trust fund when I get back. I don't need the money right now. Can I let you know after the Escobar trial? Gwen, you're an adult now. Do what feels right for you. If you want to stay here forever, I will be sad, but will support you. I love you, sweetheart. She started to sniffle again. Ugh, I've cried so much this year that everyone thinks I'm a relative of Tammy Faye Baker. He let her take her time to calm down. Gwen, I regret getting involved in your marriage so many times, but I have something to share with you. It's completely your choice to continue or not. You have a lot of friends here. People call me Uncle Greg, and I can't keep track of them all. It feels nice to have a big family, doesn't it? She nodded. Two people had already come up to her in the restaurant, calling her Aunt Gwen. She had stopped trying to remember them all. "All right, Dad, what is this plan you have that will make my life even more complicated?" he told her. She was surprised at first, but soon her lawyer instincts kicked in and she saw that the plan had some good points. On Monday, she started making things happen. By Friday, everything was set. "Wow, this is a nightmare!" Hardy shouted. He had just received divorce papers right on the courthouse steps. It seemed Gwen had asked a local judge to move the case from Boston to Birmingham since they both lived in the same state. There was even a court date, and the reason was mentioned as cheating. He immediately called his lawyer in Boston, furious. "I thought this was over. The final decision was supposed to come in 2 weeks. What happened? You've got me there." "All I can say is I was sent a request to change the court location and the judge approved it. Honestly, he seemed happy to be done with it. I heard about a divorce in Florida that took over a year and both sides had lawyers. But this one might break records. After all that, they got back together. Good luck, Hardy. You'll see my bill soon." They were back at the start. He had no choice but to hire a new lawyer and begin the process all over again. The first court date was coming up and his lawyer insisted he be there. The judge wanted both of them to show up. He didn't want to go but had to agree. "I don't know what to say. He's really pushing for it. He's not the usual judge. She's on a break. I hear he can be tough. Best to be on his good side." Hardy should have paid closer attention, but he had too much on his mind to think about it. He stood on the court steps with his lawyer, ready to go inside. Gwen and her lawyer came too. They stood close but didn't talk. She nodded at him but didn't say a word. Hardy was shocked when the judge walked in. A cold feeling hit his stomach. It was Judge J.T. Harlan. Once the preliminary stuff was done, he called the first case. "Wilkes v. Wilkes, Your Honor." "Okay, who wants to go first?" Gwen and her lawyer were quick to reply. "We will, Your Honor." "Instead of opening remarks, I'd like Mrs. Wilkes to make a statement." Judge Harlan looked over his glasses, focusing on Gwen. "Please go ahead. Your Honor, I want to take back my petition." Hardy's lawyer had to push him down into his seat. The judge glared at him. "Boy, if you make even a small fuss, I'll delay this for 6 months. Do you understand?" Hardy nodded. "I need to hear your answer." It was almost like a growl. "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." "Good. Now, Mrs. Wilkes, what were you saying?" "I wish to take back my petition, Your Honor." "Why?" "Because I still want to be married to Mr. Wilkes." "You need to give a bit more reason than that." "I understand you two are apart because of your unfaithfulness. Why hold on to him?" "I can't stop loving him, Your Honor. I've really tried. I even agreed to the divorce because I thought I owed it to him. But being apart has made me grow up and see things clearly. The more I understand, the more I want to save my marriage. I've failed at many things except my job. I wasn't a good daughter and I wasn't a good wife. I hid my hopes for the marriage just to get him. Then I tried to control him to keep him. I didn't know what kind of man he was. In some ways, he was just as guilty of lying and trying to control things as I was. If I had known his past, I might not have gone after him at all. I thought he was gentle and maybe a bit weak, so I started to disrespect him. The cheating was the last straw. I only discovered his true self when things got really hard. Even then, when he could have hurt me badly, he seemed sorry for the one time he did hit me." Judge Harlan listened closely and believed her. "Tell me, Mrs. Wilkes, do you think he can love you again? You hurt him a lot. I've also heard from reliable sources that he did more than just slap you when he found out. Can you stay with a man who can do that?" She answered right away. "Yes, Your Honor. I think he's sorry for what he did, and I promise I won't give him a reason to act like that again." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkes." He turned to Hardy. "Mr. Wilkes, would you like to say something?" His lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client does not wish to speak. He wants the divorce to continue, but wishes to change the reason from adultery to irreconcilable differences." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is that true?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Wilkes, please stand." "What now?" he thought as he stood up. "Mr. Wilkes, did you love your wife before this incident?" "Very much, Your Honor. But that doesn't mean I—" "No extra words, boy. Just a yes or no." "Do you hate her now?" "No, Your Honor, but—" "Young man, you are testing my patience. Yes or no, do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Is your life better without her? Yes or no?" "No." "Do Do you miss her and what you had? Yes. Now this next one is simple. You can actually speak now. Walk up to her and stand in front of me. They stood in front of the judge. Now, Hardy, to get your divorce, you just need to look her in the eye and say you don't love her anymore. Go ahead. It should be easy if it's truly over. Time passed. 30 seconds went by, then a whole minute. The judge grew impatient. Finally, Hardy said something. What does love have to do with it? I had a dog when I was a kid, a pit bull from the Warlock line. It was the most beautiful dog I ever saw. I raised my dog from a puppy and spent every free moment with it. One day, out of nowhere, it bit me hard. I had to get stitches, and I still have the scars to remind me. After that, the dog acted like it used to, never biting me again for the rest of its life. I loved it, but I could never trust it again. I had to be careful around it. Now I still want a divorce. Love doesn't matter anymore. Trust is what counts. I worry she might hurt me again. The judge tried to look serious at Hardy. This isn't the time for you to act like a singer or a dog trainer. Just tell her you don't love her and it will be done. Hardy stood there, quiet. The judge was losing patience. Come on, do it. We have other people waiting to deal with their problems. Just make it easy. Tell her. Hardy began to speak but couldn't say anything. For the first time, Gwen saw tears in his eyes. It was both sweet and painful to see. The judge grunted. I thought this might happen. In my opinion, your marriage can be saved, so I order you to see a marriage counselor for at least 5 visits. I'll check the results afterward. If after that... Hardy finally spoke up. Now, wait a minute, JT. I won't... That'll be a $500 fine for interrupting me and for swearing in my court. We have kids here, for goodness sake. Now, as I was saying, you will go for at least 10 sessions. Hardy was getting very upset. If you think I'm going to go through with this nonsense... The judge actually broke his gavel. Last chance. Be quiet or go to jail. Your fine just went up to $1,000. Now, a minimum of 20 sessions with a counselor you choose. Hardy turned and headed for the door. Mr. Wilkes, get back here right now! He kept walking until he got to the door, which was blocked by 2 bailiffs and a deputy sheriff. The old bailiff tried to talk him down. Calm down, Hardy. You might think you can take us, but we're old and not fit. That's why we have this job. But we have tasers, and I really don't think you want to fight all 3 of us. Just go back before JT gets really angry. He looks like he could lose his temper, and it's not good for his health. Please, just go back. Hardy looked at them and felt his anger fade away. He turned and went back to the judge. JT waved his broken gavel. One more word, and you'll be in jail for disrespecting the court. Do you understand? Good. Now get a counselor, set up your appointments, and Hardy, if you miss even one, you'll be in jail before the day is over. Got it? Hardy nodded and went back to the table to whisper to his lawyer. The lawyer shook his head furiously, but after a moment he looked down, defeated. Judge, Mr. Wilkes wants me to repeat exactly what he just told me. Remember, sir, he said it, not me. Can I continue? JT nodded. What is he up to now? Sir, he wants you to know he has lost all respect for you as a judge. The way this court is being used is making him ashamed to be a lawyer. Even kangaroos would be shocked by what's happening today. He refuses to go to so many counseling sessions. Instead, he is ready to go to jail whenever you say, to start his time for contempt. The lawyer looked nervous, waiting for the judge's reaction. For a moment, Gwen thought the judge might faint. He went from pale to red, then purple. He couldn't say anything for a few seconds. When he finally spoke, he was nearly shouting, Sir, your client is being a fool. Right now is the perfect time. Bailiff, take Mr. Wilkes to the county jail right away. Mr. Wilkes, you are the most stubborn person I've ever met. You can sit there for a while. I'll come see you in a couple of days to see if you're nicer by then. If not, you'll be staying in county jail. Do you want to say sorry now? Hardy smiled. I'm sorry, JT, for almost giving you a heart attack. You really need to relax. What if you die before you see me? Then what will I do? The judge was so angry he was banging his shoe on the desk. Get him out of here, and bring me another gavel. Court is taking a break for 20 minutes. Miss Wilkes, can I talk to you alone in my office? You won't need your lawyer. Gwen led him into his office. He was still upset. I try to help someone, and this is what happens. Stubborn and arrogant. The judge kept talking for a few minutes. He finally looked up. Sorry, dear, I didn't think he would get this angry. Well, Judge, you did push him a bit, and he doesn't like being pushed. Are you really going to leave him in jail? No, I'll let him sit there for a few hours, then I'll talk to him. Maybe we'll both be calm enough to reach an agreement. Do you still want to go ahead with it? Yes, sir. Offer him 10 counseling sessions to begin with, but make sure he knows there might be more. Let him choose the counselor that might help. As she turned to leave, she looked back and said, I don't know what you get out of this, but thank you. And Judge, tell him I still care about him, no matter how mad he gets. Will Rob Williams, the sheriff of Jefferson County, was about to have lunch. In most southern states, a county sheriff has a lot of power. They know who's good, who's bad, and who's a fool. They know who can be dangerous and who the serious players are. Nothing happens in their area that they don't find out about sooner or later. As he left his office, he spotted a prisoner being taken to the cells. He saw that the man wasn't handcuffed, which was against the rules. He walked over to see who was in charge of the prisoner and made a note to talk to him later. The man looked familiar. Well, look who it is, Hard-Ass Wilkes. I heard you were back in town. I kept meaning to catch up with you, but you know how it is with all the work. Did someone finally get you in trouble? He smiled big as he reached out for a handshake. Good to see you, Will Rob. How's Myrtle? Still too good for you? Yeah, but after 30 years, it doesn't seem to bother her like it used to. I'll tell her you asked about her. It'll make her happy. Here to see a prisoner? Hardy's smile got even bigger. Not really. I'm the prisoner. I guess I shouldn't have talked back to your father-in-law. You made JT mad enough to land you in jail? I have to hear this. Deputy, I'm taking over this prisoner's case. I'll deal with it from here. Let's grab some lunch while you tell me what's up. Don't worry about JT. He'll be busy in court for a while. I'll bring you back before he comes and tries to brag. They spent an hour and a half eating and catching up. The first hour was fun and full of happy memories of the past. The last half hour turned serious as they talked about Hardy's marriage. That's too bad. I know her from work. She's a great lawyer and wins a lot of cases. Most people know you're her husband. They call her Mrs. Hardass because she's tough. People would rather take a plea deal than face her in court, and she's a beautiful woman. Did you hear she took the Escobar case? We'll look out for her when the trial starts next month, but you know how it goes. Don't worry, Will Rob. I've got it under control. The sheriff frowned. I'm not going to tell you how to look after your wife. I don't want to know anything, all right? Just be careful. Are you carrying a weapon? Not yet. I got my permit last month. By next week, I'll have my Smith .40 with me. What Will Rob said next surprised him completely. You know she carries a .380 in her purse? She's a great shot, too. I've seen her at the shooting range. Gwen? Guns? He never heard her say anything about them and thought she didn't like them. This was yet another side of his wife he didn't know about. They headed back to the jail, feeling uneasy. Hardy looked calm as the heavy doors shut behind them. He was placed in a common cell with 6 other inmates. Around 6 o'clock, JT showed up, ready to hear an apology and take Hardy out for dinner. He found Hardy sitting on one side of the cell. On the other side, there were 4 other inmates, and one was lying on the floor completely out. What happened here? He asked. Hardy tried to smile, but his lip was swollen and split. One of his eyes was closing up, and he had a big bump on his jaw. You know how it goes, JT. We didn't agree on football. They were Auburn fans, and I shouted, "Roll Tide." I had to admit they had a great season. And did you know the jailer went to Ole Miss? He called us all bad names and made us talk about politics. Then he sprayed a whole bottle of pepper spray on us. The judge shook his head. Hardy, you need to watch your mouth. One day it could get you in real trouble. Have you calmed down? Are you ready to listen and maybe make a deal? Hardy's eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. JT, as much as I like it here with these guys, the macaroni and cheese was great tonight. I just want to sleep in my own bed. But if you keep bothering me about those 20 sessions, I might start asking about dessert. Don't make me angry again. Your talk this morning really upset me. I don't remember you caring about the rules when I helped you stay out of jail when you were younger. If it hadn't been for the recruiter being the son of my fishing buddy, you'd be serving 3 to 5 years in Huntsville instead of only 4 for Uncle Sam. Hardy knew he had made a mistake. Sorry, JT. I remember how much I owe you and Will Rob, but it still frustrates me when she is always in my face. I just want it to be over. You will get it sorted, I promise. But you need to talk to her first, get some closure, like they say. Here's the deal. 10 sessions, and you pick the counselor. After that, I'll go with their advice. If they say it's over, it's over. If they say you need more, we'll discuss it before I decide. That's the best offer you're gonna get. Take it or face a rough breakfast tomorrow. I hear powdered eggs aren't too bad. Hardy accepted the deal. JT drove him back to his truck, reminding him to have the counselor's name on his desk by next Friday. Gwen felt so happy. Hardy agreed to the 10 sessions. He even mentioned a counselor from his past, which was good because he would feel more comfortable with someone he knows. He promised to email her the time of the first appointment. It seemed he still didn't want to talk face-to-face, but she could handle that, at least for now. As she drove into her apartment complex, she noticed a car. It was a vintage Cadillac convertible, maybe from the early 70s, and it looked brand new, so shiny it was almost blinding. What caught her attention even more were the people inside it. A young black man in his early 20s, dressed very nicely in a suit, was driving a car. Next to him sat a small, older white woman who was also dressed well. When Gwen got out of her car, the man was standing beside her. She couldn't help but notice how graceful and handsome he looked. "Excuse me for bothering you, ma'am. Are you Mrs. Wilkes?" he asked. Gwen felt a bit cautious but nodded. "Could you please talk to the lady in the car? She has trouble moving around and she's a bit shy about it. We won't take much of your time. She has been very excited to meet you. Just for a moment, please." The man looked so honest and straightforward that she agreed. As she walked over, the older woman looked at her nervously, finally putting on a thick pair of glasses. She smiled widely. "It's her, Marcus. I swear if you had red hair, you'd look just like her, don't you think so?" "I agree. The similarity is amazing," he said. Gwen was confused. "Excuse me, but what are you talking about?" The woman gave her a look like those strict teachers from school. "You, of course. Has nobody told you that you look just like your grandmother? Did you know my grandmother? Virginia Howe? Oh, child, I'm her baby sister. I'm your great-aunt. Aren't you going to invite us in? I know you were raised differently, but goodness, leaving an old lady in the sun? Marcus, help me." He smiled at her with affection. "Yes, Miss Daisy. I'll get your cane now." "Marcus, stop it. That was funny a long time ago," she said with a laugh. He quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Aunt Daisy. Sometimes I just can't resist. It's funny to see the look on strangers' faces, especially Aunt Gwen." Gwen watched as they settled down, leaning on his arm and the cane. Once they were all seated and had sweet tea in front of them, Gwen felt curious. "My great-aunt. I'm so sorry, but I had no idea you were out there. I would have looked for you." Daisy waved her hand like it was no big deal. "Don't worry, dear. I'm here now. I blame your mother. She didn't want your father to talk to us. Look at this." She handed Gwen an old photo. The date on the back said 1967. It showed a young girl, maybe in her teens, with a big smile, curly hair, and a pretty dress. Gwen held it up to a mirror, and she had to agree. They looked a lot alike. "I wish I could have known her." Daisy gave her another photo. This one showed a woman in her late 40s or early 50s holding a child around 4 or 5 years old. "That's you and her during a family reunion. You were a handful, but you weren't mean. You followed her around like a little puppy, getting worried if you couldn't see your gam-gam, which was your way of saying grandma. She loved you very much." She let out a deep breath. "I wish I could remember her." "You can, dear, in your heart. Your mother worried about you a lot. She and your grandmother did not get along well. Your mother never trusted her." Thinking about her mother, she felt her grandmother was right. "Marcus, can you please get the books?" He stood up and went to the car. He came back with 3 big books and a Bible. "What are those?" Daisy smiled widely. "This is the result of 50 years of work. It's your family history. You can't keep the books, but Marcus has it on a computer. You can learn more about your family than you ever thought possible. Let me show you this." She held up a family picture. It showed a mother, a father, a son, and 2 daughters. "That's your great-grandmother and great-grandfather with your grandma, me, and Wilkes, our brother. I have a great-uncle?" "Yes, but he died young in a bad place called Korea. He never got married. You are the last grandchild in our family." "What about your family?" She noticed the shiny ring on Daisy's finger. The old woman's face showed deep sadness. "Sadly, we never had kids. They didn't have the tests they have now to find out why. We adopted a boy, a child of a distant cousin. Here's a picture of him and his family. She showed a photo of a young couple with a baby, looking happy and full of dreams. He was our joy. My husband loved him dearly. But his family died in a terrible car accident, a 23-car crash in thick fog. My husband never got over it. The old lady wiped her eyes, still upset by the memory. So you see, dear, you are the last of the Howes. It's sad to see a family end, especially one as proud as ours. Gwen felt a deep sadness for this old lady. She knelt in front of her chair and hugged her softly. The old woman's thin shoulders shivered a little. Daisy gently pushed her back. Look at me. I must seem like a silly old woman, but I am so happy to meet you. They talked for 3 hours. Daisy loved sharing the family history with her. She showed Gwen a picture of a young man in a Confederate uniform. This is your 4 times great-grandfather, Alexander Howe. He was a major and survived the Battle of Vicksburg. I have his journal. It was a terrible time. There are tear stains on the pages where he wrote about having to kill his horse for food. Many people were hungry. He was honored for his bravery twice before the war ended. She held up another picture of a Union soldier. This is the man who accepted his surrender. His name is Gregory Stowe Canaday, and yes, you are related to him too. He is also your 4 times great-grandfather, and your father has his name. Even though he was from Boston, he was assigned to the Army of the West because they needed engineers. After the war, they became friends, and that's how your family started a law office here. He got tired of using his skills to hurt people and decided to help them instead. Gwen felt a little dizzy. Wow, I went from being an only child to being related to everyone I know. It's a wonder I'm not related to my husband. Miss Daisy smiled at her. Well, actually, your husband's 4-time great-grandfather, Francis Wesley Wilkes, is married to Alexander's sister, so that makes you about a 14th cousin once removed. Gwen just sat there, her mouth open in surprise. Then she started laughing. When she calmed down, she said, Sorry. Sorry, Aunt Daisy, but I just realized I'm a real Southern stereotype. I married my cousin. This made Marcus and Daisy laugh too, and Gwen joined in. When they all stopped laughing, she asked how they gathered so much information. I studied history at Bama, then taught high school history for 40 years. For the older facts, I used visits, courthouse records, family Bibles, and stories from locals. When Marcus came along, his computer skills helped a lot. Let me show you something. She showed Gwen an old family Bible. See the pages in the back filled with writing? Old Bibles were sold with blank pages so families could write down births, deaths, and important events. They still count as legal proof of birth and age. Look here. Daisy turned to the last page. It showed the births of her grandmother, father, and herself. It was the final entry in the book. This is my father's family Bible. When I'm gone, it will be yours. There are a few empty pages. I hope you fill them with your own family names one day. Gwen felt tears in her eyes. With a little push, she shared her sad story and her worry that she might never add another name. Daisy surprised her. Snap out of it, girl. I'm not judging, but you've made some big mistakes. Try to fix them if you can, and if not, move on. If you want your man back, go after him with everything you've got. If you need help, ask for it. Just look at all this family you can rely on. She pointed at the books. Gwen smiled. Thanks. I might just do that. Am I related to everyone in Birmingham? Child, you could close your eyes, throw a rock, and hit someone you're related to. She grinned a cheeky grin that only older folks can get away with. And I'm not just talking about the white folks either. Your cousin Marcus here could be very helpful. Gwen looked back and forth between them. Okay, I need to know. How did this happen? It seems Alexander had a relationship with a woman who turned out to be his great-great-grandmother. And by relationship, I mean in the way one person owns another and saying no wasn't really an option. Gwen covered her mouth in shock. It wasn't that bad. Apparently, he cared for her enough not to remarry after his wife died. He chose to be with her instead. She chose to stay with him after the war. She had 3 children with him. Sadly, one baby died during birth and another from cholera. But one child, his great-grandfather, lived and raised 7 kids. We learned all this after Marcus came to me. He was looking into his family history. I have the journals of Alexander and Beth. In one of the entries, Beth seemed to accept her situation. She said she was thankful for the Niagara Jess for taking away her need to be a wife, which she found too hard to handle. We did a DNA test and it shows we're related. She smiled at Marcus with pride. He's halfway through getting his master's degree in history. I've made him my heir because he follows my path, forgives our ancestors, and is kind to me, an old woman who feels lonely. He deserves this after all the years he spent trying to change my mind. Gwen felt deeply touched, thinking about how love can be found in unexpected places. They left after making her promise to visit them often. She helped Daisy into the car, listening to her complain as they went. I think I made a mistake when I gave Marcus this car. It was the first new car my husband ever bought. I hated it back then. It hadn't worked in 20 years, and I didn't believe he could fix it. It took him 6 years, but now it looks brand new. I would much rather ride in my Mercedes, but if he drives, this is all he will take. That night, Gwen snuggled into bed, thinking about how wonderful family is. She didn't focus on all the people she had managed to put in jail over the last 10 months, like Vicente Escobar, Ronnie Wilkes, and Allan Hovis, the snake, but they were all thinking about her. To be continued. Dear audience, the next part of the story will be published in a few hours. Please wait to see where Hardy's story goes. If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.